God's been tongued. If I say don't worry, I'm not going to look like this the whole time, I might lose some Locked Tomb fans. But I'm not going to look like this the whole time. This really shitty pencil eyeliner wouldn't have lasted the amount of time that it took me to do the recap of Harrow. That being said, hi, welcome to Attempting to Summon Alecto the Ninth Part 2, Harrow the Ninth, the second book in the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Moore. If you're here, you probably saw part 1, the first book. If you are some freak that has not seen the last video and has not read any of the Locked Tomb books, hello? I don't think you know what you're in for. I'm doing this 4-part series in an attempt to summon Alecto the Ninth, the 4th and final book in the Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Moore, because we've been waiting for something, a release date that doesn't get bumped back further, a cover, some sign of life for many years. But we're doing all these Locked Tomb things. In this video, it's a Harrow the Ninth recap. I am aware it looks like I have massive eyebrows because I do have massive eyebrows. Anyway, that's enough of the preface. Hello. Harrow the First. Harrow the Ninth. This book, it's not linear. The chapters tend to alternate between the present, which is told in second person, but that present timeline is non-chronological. So we'll get some analepsis and some prolepsis, me using my fancy narratology terms, with the Emperor's murder being the point in time in which everything is measured against. And then the second storyline, which is the third person, what happened at Canaan House, with Harrow being the central character in all of this. I think I have to take the hood off. I tried to got-to-be gel my hair so that it would look kind of like Harrow's on the cover, and I don't think I succeeded. Why am I always flipping my hair the wrong way?
Let the bodies hit the floor.
I think I need to give you a magic lesson before we really get into this book, because Harrow is a necromancer and they're going to be throwing out all these terms, and I'm just going to explain them to you now so that as we go you know what's happening. In necromancy, they can technically do all of the different kinds of magic, but they have specializations. So when I say things like Harrow is a bone magician, Harrow specializes in bones. She can technically do the other two types of magic, which are spirit magic and flesh magic. And then within those 3 houses of magic, there are also different classifications of necromancer, anatomists, animophiliacs, generalists, occultists, psychometrists, siphoners, and speakers to the dead. They tend to correlate to the planet that they come from, but not all of the time. That one I'm iffy on. It seems like it's all the time. The thing that Palamedes was doing, that I kept saying he was making like images of things, he was doing psychometry, which is when you can read the thanergetic or thalergetic signature of an object. As we recall, thanergy is death energy and thalergy is life energy. So necromancers can set wards and traps. She can cast spells with blood to like protect herself. Essentially, she could set like a bone kind of trap. So if someone perchance was rifling through her closet, if there had been a bone trap there, they would have been shanked by some skeletons. A normal necromancer, every time they do magic, they have a limited amount. Lictors don't. Because of that whole eating their cavalier's soul thing, they can just do magic whenever they want. There's no limit on it. Like, you know how Harrow kept passing out before because she was doing too much magic? Not the case now. She can just do magic however much she wants. We begin the night before the Emperor's murder. Harrow and God and some other lictors appear to be bracing for an attack. Content warning Anthe Tridentarius comes up to Harrow and says, Harrow, you're done for. Something called a resurrection beast in the river. And Harrow's like, all right, I'm gonna die. We jump to 14 months later. It's not after, it's before. I just can't talk with Harrow and her two-handed sword. Harrow's in a hospital on the Big God spaceship. The Big God spaceship is called the Erebos, but I barely ever call it that. So That's what I'm talking about when I talk about the big god spaceship. She can sense that there's a lot of people on this spaceship. There's a lot of necromancers. Harrow can't just sense it. Harrow can hear their hearts beating. She can hear their brains doing brain things. Harrow's going in and out of consciousness every time she comes to. She projectile vomits. She's also naked. Completely naked. Not actually. She's naked of face paint. We don't ever want Harrow Harknonochismus naked. And she really doesn't like that. So she's taken to painting her face with her blood. And she has no veil here. She has no robes of the ninth house. She's cut up her hospital gown and is using that. She's also using her bed sheet as a cape. Harrow's doing super well actually on this spaceship. Harrow doesn't know why, but she knows she needs to protect this giant sword. She wants to be around it, but she also thinks it hates her. Every time she touches it, it burns her. Harrow can't even lift up that sword. Remember, Harrow is a tiny, teeny, very frail lady, and she does not have the muscle to lift that sword. So she's strapped it to herself with bone. The narrator tells us that Harrow is not even taking care of that sword properly. You had never bothered to ask. Harrow will not let anybody take it from her. Harrow isn't sure what's going on. Harrow likes a shaved head, and her hair just keeps growing. It's always touching her neck, and she really does not like the feel of this hair. But she cuts her hair, and then she wakes up the next day, and it's growing back. In this state of am I alive? Am I dead? In the hospital, vomiting, protecting the sword, vomiting again. Harrow tries to pray. She can't pray. The only time that Harrow feels a little bit of peace is when the body comes. God's here. God checks in on her once in a while, wears a black t-shirt, black pants, and a little creepy crown made of baby bones. Why not? And his eyes are black. Black on black. Okay, like he's been possessed or something.
Gay is in, gay is hot. I want some gay. Gay it's gonna be.
John just walks around with his tablet on his big god spaceship, and he's like, so Harrow, I'd like to give you more time to rest and recoup. Like, this happens to some lictors, but I'm so sorry, I have to ask you to come with me. He takes Harrow, who is still staggering around in her face blood, in her hospital gown, looking around this sword. God takes Harrow into this room where there are 500 people in these, like, coffins. And he says, these are the ancient dead, and they're for you. This is your renewed house. This is for the ninth. So it's not that God has done a resurrection for Harrow. When God did the great resurrection, God stashed a couple people aside. Every once in a while, he grabs them, takes them out, and puts them in. I don't know how that really works, but he's glad to give them to Harrow because he kind of feels bad that they're just in storage. Harrow says, please, God, can I go home with these people? Weird. I thought we couldn't go home, Harrow. She says, we can't go home. Harrow been very faithful her whole life. She's a perfect little nun. And she keeps trying to kneel to God and call him God and stuff. And he's like, no, girl, it's okay. You're sick. Don't kneel. Also, don't call me God. Just call me teacher. That's not going to get confusing at all. And God says, so you know that deal I offered you at the end of the last book? That's actually complete BS. Because you see, there's these things called resurrection beasts. And they sort of chase me and my lictors, for all eternity. You can never go back to any of the ninth house planets, or one of the resurrection beasts will go to that planet and destroy it, and then we'll all be destroyed. Nothing wrong with me. Oh my god. It's too hot for the Harrow hoodie. When you die in the Lost Tomb universe, if the death is gradual, like an illness or you just die of old age, the soul transitions automatically pulled into the river by liminal osmosis. But if this death is violent, very sudden, the energy burst is very sudden, and it counteracts that pressure that would usually take your soul into the river, and that soul runs away as far as it can get. But when it comes back, it's going to try and get into something. That's how you get ghosts and revenants. It can like haunt objects that its body used to be close to. If I was suddenly unalived and I really had this sword that I really, really loved, and my soul like ran away and it came back, it could like go in that sword. But God asks Harrow, what has a soul? God tells Harrow, planets, they don't just have one soul supplying that energy. A planet is made up of a bunch of organisms. That's a kind of a communal soul. Right, Harrow? Like a person. And what would happen theoretically, if you could convert all of that communal soul, thalergy, into thanergy all at once. This is what happened during the Great Resurrection 10,000 years ago. God took those 9 planets, all of that thalergy, and instantly converted it into thanergy. And that caused an immediate expulsion of those 9 planets' souls. Stay with me. And just like a person would, those 9 souls became not happy souls. They did not transition peacefully into the river and then go to whatever other place. Those souls turned into revenants that they call resurrection beasts. 9 eldritch terrors go through the universe, eating up other thalergetic planets, sticking them to themselves. Those resurrection beasts aren't going to stop until they have unalived God. They really don't like them because, again, this is God's fault that there are 9 resurrection beasts roaming around. They're nearly impossible to unalive. All the ones they've unalived have been by accident. In the 10,000 years that we have been trying, we've unalived 5. So there are 3 left. And Harrow's doing math in her head and she's like, that doesn't equal 9. No time for math. God says, I'm going to teach you how to run because that's all we do. Harrow looks at the body over God's shoulder and says, I can't, beloved. It's gone. The Emperor clocks Harrow not talking to him, but God can't see the body. And the person that Harrow sees is this girl. She's got golden eyes, a sword strapped to her back, a beautiful mouth, long frosty golden hair. And this is the body of the locked tomb. Harrow has been seeing the body since she was 10. The body used to have dark eyes, just like Harrow's, but now they're this golden amber that makes Harrow dizzy. The body hasn't spoken to Harrow since the night her parents died, so when the body talks to Harrow now, Harrow thinks she's gone mad again. The body and Harrow have a very weird conversation. She says, I think that I did it wrong. And Harrow says this out loud because obviously she's talking to the body, and God puts a hand on her shoulder and says, Ordis Niganad did not die for nothing. And Harrow says, Ordis Niganad died thinking it was the only gift he was capable of giving, and I've wasted it. And God looks at Harrow funny and says, Ordis. Harrow falls to the ground, vomiting. God repeats, Ordis? You remember? Ordis. Harrow's cavalier. Now we get some more Harrow backstory. Harrow was constantly depressed because she knew she was the 200 children kind of thing. Harrow was having this super bad day. She can't really remember what happened that day, but she really felt like everybody hated her. I'm gonna go open the tomb and find out what's in there because there's no point to life. When she opened it, Harrow hearkened on the Jessamine and said, I think that's a girl and she's super pretty and she has a sword and I'm in love. Then one day, Harrow's parents caught her and then they offed themselves because they caught her visiting the tomb. Harrow caught a bit of the madness after that and started hearing and seeing things. And then Harrow gets the invitation to go to Canaan House and become a lictor. Hell yeah, solves all her problems, but Harrow messed that up too. She did not take Ordis in right. It was just Harrow and Ordis, right? Oh, no, sorry. There was this other girl, but she died before Harrow was born. Harrow wakes up. Ianthe is sitting next to her way too close in a shiny iridescent robe. Ianthe's eyes are a mix between blue and purple, and she has 2 arms. She's staring at Harrow like she's really hungry. Remember how Harrow can sense people? Now that she's a lictor, she can't sense Ianthe. Lictors cannot sense each other. It's just like a big black hole. Ianthe passes her a letter in Harrow's writing that says to give to Harrow when she's coherent. Harrow doesn't remember writing this letter that she wrote to herself in her own blood in a cipher that she made up when she was 7. Ianthe, although she is murderous and sort of in love with her twin, does deliver us excellent one-liners. You skull-faced fruitcake. So this letter says, hey, I wrote you 24 letters. I'm dead. You won't remember any of this. But we did the work. You can't know what that was. So I'm just going to tell you how to live your life. Number 1, stay alive. Number 2, never return to the 9th. Number 3, the sword, that 2-handed sword you keep carrying around, that will remain on you. Put it in your blood. 4, you are compromised. You can't be a good lictor. So just study really hard, even though you're kind of stupid. 5, You owe Ianthe Tridentarius the favor of the chain. Also, Ianthe will probably try to destroy you. 6. Only read the other letters if you need them. Ianthe has them and will give you 22. Carry them on you at all times and don't read them unless I instruct you to. So all of the letters sort of say things like to open in case Ianthe dies, to open if your eyes change color, to give to Camilla Hecht if you see her, which Harrow thinks is really weird because she didn't really know the 6th house. Hecht's first name was Camilla. 7. Examine Ianthe's jaw and tongue after you read this. Do whatever it takes. Harrow gets up and Harrow kisses Ianthe with tongue. This is how Harrow confirms that is Ianthe's tongue and jaw. So whatever they did, Ianthe physically can't tell Harrow because Harrow did this weird spell on her. Now we have our first flashback to Canaan House. And it's Harrow and Ortis on a shuttle to the first house. Ortis is a poet, not a fighter. This poem is called the Noniad, epic poem about Matthias Nonius, the last great cavalier that the 9th house ever produced. But in this flashback, Harrow finds a piece of paper that says, "The eggs you gave me all died, and you lied to me." Ortis tells her that letter is blank. Harrow thinks her madness has returned. Back in the present, we are introduced to another lictor. Someone has actually paralyzed Harrow and is taking her around in a wheelchair. The first thing this person does is when they say, "You can't take Harrow, God said you couldn't touch Harrow," Mercy Morn unalives this person. That lictor is Mercy Morn. I'm that bitch. Yeah. Mercy, unlike Harrow and Ianthe, can actually read lictors' bodies. So that's how she was able to paralyze Harrow. She had to train for years and years. She had to really hone this power. Mercy looks at Harrow and says, "How old are you?" And Harrow, sensing danger, looks to the body, who says, "Lie." Harrow says, "I'm 15. Mercy, oddly, looks relieved. Another excellent one-liner, this time from Mercy Morn, who tells Harrow that she looks like a bat in a birthday cake, but that she's not as pretty as Anastasia. Oh my god. Okay, so there's sort of one lictor per house, but not really. Their numbering is just based on the order in which they became lictors. It's not which house they're from, but sometimes they are from that house. Harrow is Harrow the first because she's the first Harrow, but she's the 9th saint. And that's because she's the 9th person to become a lictor. She also just happens to be from the 9th house. But Ianthe's the 8th, even though Ianthe's from the 3rd house, if that makes sense. But Anastasia and her cavalier, something went wrong during the lictorial process and it did not work. And Anastasia begged God to unalive her. God said, "No, I won't do that. Instead, how about you go to the 9th house with the thing that we're going to put in the tomb and you make sure that it's okay. All right, Anastasia?" All right. So nobody else sees Anastasia as a saint because she never became a lictor except the 9th house. The 9th house is obsessed with Anastasia. They do call her a saint. Harrow actually didn't know Anastasia was a real person until now. Anastasia mysteriously died. How odd. Ianthe, Mercy, Harrow, and God are going on this spaceship to the Mithraeum. It's the lictor home. It's many, many thousands of billions of light years away. So they have to do this thing that the lictors can do, which is travel through the river. As Ianthe so hopefully tells us, the river is a massive liminal space formed from spirit magic and populated by ghosts gone mad by hunger. Space and time don't work the same way in the river. You can drop down into there and then pop out and you'll be in a completely different place. But the thing is, when you go in the river, those hundreds of hungry ghosts try and unalive your soul. This is spirit magic, remember? Spirit magic, like Abigail Pent did. Normal necromancers, if Abigail, say, went in the river, she'd probably last 30 seconds. But a lictor, the longest they've ever lasted was 7 minutes. You might be asking, how do you pop down in the river? They have to hold their souls and bodies in place. Okay, so if your body and soul, if that connection goes undone, one of those hungry ghosts might get in your body, and that's bad. Lictors can heal themselves and can do all kinds of crazy magic. They're kind of difficult to unalive. So you don't want anything getting in there, Harrow. You baby lictor who doesn't quite work properly. If something goes wrong during this river thing, Mercy's going to unalive you. I think I explained that okay. I'm gonna be so for real. I don't super get how that works. I get the river, I get the spirit part. I don't really understand where their bodies go when they're doing this, but like, okay. They descend into the river. This part is what I would say is the 8.5 out of 10 on the gore scale that I gave this book. They think that the whole ship is flooded with water. They can breathe in the water, but it's like not super nice. But then it starts getting really icky. I don't even really want to tell you about it, so I'm just gonna skip past it. Both Ianthe and Harrow are struggling. Harrow panics and starts doing necromancy. God looks over at her. Oh, he used a word you did not understand. Harrowhark, no theorems. Don't be ridiculous. She can't be using theorems, said Mercy. She'd barely be awake, and it's totally beyond her at this point. John, stop her. She's using theorems. God has to grab Harrow, and they make it out of the river, but just barely. That didn't go super well. Harrow at Canaan House. Remember, they got tea. Harrow thinks tea is way too flavorful. Harrow, I eat the same thing every day, and lemon water is too spicy. Teacher tells us a story about Canaan House. It was meant to be like the home base of all of the lictors, and that's where God worked to rebuild everything right after the resurrection. And that's why there's all those notes in the basement, because that was all of the lictors, pre-lictorhood, necromancer and cavaliers figuring out how to do it. All of those trials, each one was made by one of those necromancer cavalier couples who then became the first lictors. Teacher tells them that be careful down there in the basement, because there's this thing that we call the sleeper, and it's going to try and unalive you. So don't wake it up. And one of the skeleton construct servants looks at Harrow and says, "Is this how it happened?" The way that every chapter starts with Harrow waking up after falling unconscious. Poor baby. Harrow wakes up where she belongs. In a pew in a church. She's at Cytherea's funeral. There are 3 existing lictors. Mercy Morn, Augustine.
I don't care who the IRS sends. I am not paying taxes.
And this third one that God tells them he hasn't seen in a long time. The other lictors are talking with God, and they're talking about how lovely Cytherea was. She was the nicest of all the lictors. She was the most empathetic towards people who aren't lictors, and she loved everybody so much. She was patient, she was kind. 2 crumpled bodies, Abigail Pent and Magnus Gwyn. Written in dripping blood are the words, "Death to the 4th house." On the ceiling, written in blood, are the words, "Sweet dreams." Half of those ashes in the furnace belonged, for certain, to Bertha Dulcinea Septimus is in the furnace. That's the other person in there. And Cytherea removes Ianthe's arm. "I am the vengeance of the 10 billion. I have come back home to unalive the emperor and burn his houses." Cytherea's cavalier was named Loveday, and her and Loveday really didn't want to do the lictor thing when they figured it out. They did it because Loveday thought that that would help save Cytherea from dying of cancer. And as we know, it really didn't. Cytherea just kind of existed in this perpetual state of dying of cancer. That missing lictor storms into the funeral. He's very muscly. He runs in there, confirming that Cytherea is actually deceased, and then tells them there is a resurrection beast coming for them. They're on the Mithram right now, by the way. That resurrection beast will be there in 10 months. It's number 7. At this point, they can't go into the river to escape it because they just run right into it. And the lictors have to stay and fight it. They don't really have a choice. They've increased their numbers after all. They got 2 new baby lictors. That was the whole point of that whole trial thing, right? So now there's 5 of us. The new lictor that just walked in, the really muscular guy, he called God John. Harrow does not approve of that. She's like, what the frick do you mean that the god that I worship is named John? This man is referred to as Jod by the fandom, and I'll probably call him Jod by accident sometimes. Jod says to this lictor that stormed in, "Thank you for making it home, Ortis the First." And Harrow starts bleeding out of her ears and passes out. Canaan House, where Ortis, Harrow's cavalier, is reading poetry to Abigail and Magnus in the library. Abigail, the excellent spirit magician that she is, if you give Abigail a note that someone wrote and that person is dead, she can summon their ghost just using that note because they left their energetic signature on it. She would just need something to feed them. She just need a little bit of blood. Abigail gives Harrow a piece of paper. And then Magnus asks her, is this really how it happens? Before Harrow can answer that question, Abigail says, Harrow, I've counted at least 150 spirit signatures on you. What's up with that, girl? Harrow, who is very triggered by this question, runs away. If Abigail keeps asking her weird questions like that, she's going to have to unalive her. Harrow reads that paper. The eggs you gave me all died, and you lied to me, so I did the implantation myself, you self-serving zombie, and you still sent him after me, and I would have had him if I hadn't been compromised, and he took pity on me. He saw me, and he took pity on me, and for that I'll make you both suffer until you no longer understand the meaning of that goddamned word. Ordis tells Harrow that paper just says, if you come to my room, I will make you the potato dish you liked. Ordis is really getting on her nerves. He has perfect face paint and never argues with her, and like, what's up with that? And Ordis says, I'm glad that I never became your cavalier. Present day, Harrow wakes up again from being unconscious and finds herself, she's standing over Cytherea's body with her sword in hand. Stabbed Cytherea. Doesn't remember how she got there, and she doesn't know why she's doing that. Up to this point in the book, time has been a little bit linear except for that prologue, but now we're about to get really funky. We're 6 months until the Emperor's murder. Harrow has unalived 12 planets at this point, and she's in the process of unaliving her 13th under the tutelage of Mercy. Mercy has sort of taken charge of teaching Harrow Hark, and Augustine has taken charge of teaching Ianthe. If you unalive a little planet with not a lot of life on it, you're not going to get a big resurrection beast. It's not like what God did to those 9 planets during the resurrection. It's a much smaller scale. The lictors can handle it. And they're doing this so that as the resurrection beast comes for them, it can't eat those planets and add them to its mass. They're taking out kind of all the little snacks that are around the Mithraeum. You might ask, how do you unalive a planet? Oh, Jesus Christ. You do the stabby, and then you go into the river where the spirit is, and then you unalive the spirit in the river. And that's how you prevent the soul from running away and becoming anything bigger. Mercy tells Harrow that she's failed again. Mercy says it doesn't matter how fast you do it if your body has hypothermia. The thing that's wrong with Harrow, every time that Harrow's spirit leaves her body is supposed to warm itself. It's supposed to be able to fight without her in it, because that's the cavalier. The cavalier's mind, their soul, that gone. But the muscle memory of living is supposed to take over. So every time Harrow goes into the river, her body just they keep calling her the broken infant. Harrow goes to hang out with the Ianthe.
You're useless. Give him to me.
Who has taken to calling her Harry. They're sort of friends, but Ianthe's really struggling. Also can't fight quite right when she leaves her body. Naberius is not working. That new arm was just kind of sewed on, from somebody else, because we learn here, and this confuses me, the lictors cannot regrow limbs. They can regrow their fingers, but you cannot regrow your arm. And you can't, if you get then you'd be gone. God could probably regrow it for Ianthe, but Ianthe doesn't want to ask God. That's embarrassing. Also, everyone says it's supposed to work. It's just a mental block that she has. And Ianthe, kind of she's coming on to Harrow, says, Harrow, grow me a new arm.
You want to be sexed up, abusive lesbians?
That disgusts Harrow. Yucky, Ianthe. I'm not going to grow you a new arm. Get out. The Mithraeum. It's like a giant space station, but made from graves. And Harrow, she spends a lot of time with John. Their interactions are like John is Harrow's new stepdad.
But I made it for you.
Oh.
Good soup.
He makes her tea and gives her biscuits. Harrow does not like tea, and Harrow does not eat the biscuits, but she sits there and they have little conversations. When they left the big god spaceship, they had an attack on 3 of their spaceships, and they lost 15,000 people. They lost a bunch of people. And God tells Harrow that the people who did that attack are called Blood of Eden. This rebel group that sprung up about 5,000 years ago, they purposefully hunt the 9 houses. They call them zombies, pushing back against the 9th invasions. About 25 years ago, these people, the Blood of Eden, got really effective because they had this really charismatic leader, but they're gone now, unalived about 19 years ago, and they became sort of a martyr figure for the Blood of Eden, which unfortunately that was effective too. Blood of Eden has been really moving in on the 9 houses. Jod thinks that maybe Blood of Eden was part of Kitharea's plan. Like, they radicalized Kitharea. She would not have done that by herself. She loved them. Also, God knows about the whole Harrow's parents unaliving 200 children to create her thing. What sort of tipped God off about this was Harrow doing necromancy in the river, because Harrow should not be able to do that. The level of magic that Harrow can do, even in her sort of weakened, not really a lictor state, is impossible. God's like, it's because you got that 200 baby magic. Your parents low-key did a resurrection. They turned 200 people into one person, sort of. Unique little goth baby that you are, you're not like other necromancers. And God's like, yeah, you know, Harrow, sorry, that was my bad. And I take responsibility for all that. I absolve you of sin. Harrow, I super hate myself and am riddled with Catholic guilt, nonagesmus, is reeling a little bit from this. Jod is bonding with Harrow over the fact that both of them have had to live with this really atrocious thing. No one's business, this thing. Once you turn your back on something, you have no more right to act as though you own it. What did you do, God? Harrow's still seeing the body, by the way. When Harrow sleeps now, she always dreams of the body. Harrow has started a new diary. And they told her that her old diaries, the ones from Canaan House, yeah, they burned those. She has a diary with sections on Ianthe, Augustine, Mercy, and obviously the Saint of Duty, Ordis.
I do not kill people. That is my least favorite thing to do.
Ianthe. Unworthy of trust, suspects me mad. Harrow is convinced that Kitharea's body is being moved around. Anyway, Harrow's sections on Augustine and Mercy mourn mainly focus on the fact that Mercy and Augustine really don't like each other. Mercy mourns cavalier was Christabel. Augustine's cavalier was Alfred. It seems like Mercy did something bad and that God doesn't know about it. And also, Augustine tells Mercy, stop moving Kitharea's body around. Mercy says she's not moving Kitharea's body around, thank you very much. He says, you will never be like Ael. Ael, who was God's bodyguard. I wonder who that was. So remember when I said the resurrection beasts are real big? That 7th one, that's the one coming after them. That one's the one that's 50,000 kilometers long. As that thing moves through space, that would just flatten solar systems. To move around, they project their souls into the river. And then the physical part that attacks the lictors is the heralds. Hive mind, little conglomerates of everything that the resurrection beast has absorbed. Evil bees out of planets. Stay with me. I know you're fading. Very scary to the lictors. They inspire in them something called herald fear. Your soul's in the river fighting the actual resurrection beast, like the main part of it. But your body on the Mithraeum is getting attacked by heralds, and that's okay. You're not going to be afraid because your cavalier is fighting the heralds off, and they're not afraid because they're unalive. I can't stress this enough. For example, if Ianthe were in the river fighting the resurrection beast, her body, Nibirius Turn's instincts would take over and he'd be fighting the heralds. But if you walked up to Nibirius Turn and said, nice hair, Nibirius, he would not respond to you because Nibirius Turn is dead. The lictors plus God are debriefing Harrow and Ianthe on this. They tell them that below the river, there's this abyss. And that's where we try and force the resurrection beast down into, because once you get in that abyss, gone. Bye-bye. Done. The only things that are really going wrong in Harrow's life are that, 1, she's not a proper lictor. 2, Ordis keeps trying to unalive her. Canaan House, we remember. Judith the second has been unalived by the sleeper. It had a shotgun, pew 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 8 times to Judith. Harrow and Abigail are working together to inspect her body. When they talk to Marta, who is Marta the second, remember, cavalier to Judith, still alive. Marta says, why am I here? Abigail's like, don't worry, we just need you to tell us about the sleeper in the coffin in the basement. Marta tells them it's in a glass coffin. It's in an orange hazmat suit. Are you sure this is how it happened? And it's sleeping on top of a sword. A two-handed sword. So back in the present time, all of the lictors have a second name. The Saint of Joy, the Saint of Patience. Ordis is the Saint of Duty. So the first time that the Saint of Duty tries to unalive Harrow was just a few days into when they got to the Mithram. Harrow was in the kitchen eating some soup when something through her chest. But as we know, Harrow is a menace. Not easy to unalive her. They're fighting. They're making a lot of noise. Harrow's like, why isn't anyone coming to help me? And then falls at Mercy's feet, who heals her, but not in like a nice way. God would not be super happy if I didn't do this. Saint of Duty, why don't you just wait? She's gonna get unalived when the heralds get here anyway. She's completely useless. Just put her out an airlock when I'm sleeping and I won't have to interfere. The Saint of Duty really wants her sword. As we know, Harrow is very attached to this sword. She keeps it skeleton glued to her at all times. She sleeps with that sword. Harrow is not going to give up that sword, and the Saint of Duty isn't going to give up until he's unalived her. The sword that Harrow is carrying around, the two-hander, which I think sometimes I accidentally call a broadsword, but I'm pretty sure it's a long sword. It's taller than her. It's a big sword. She's sort of constantly hunched over because of the weight and length of this giant sword that she has skeleton glued to her back. Harrow in her iridescent robe with the giant sword strapped to her, limping around the Mithram. The Saint of Duty tries to unalive her 14 times. Graphically.
I stabbed him 37 times in the chest.
Every time she either runs away or is saved by someone else. Mercy, Anthe, that was embarrassing, and one time God. And after God saved her, when God heals the lictors, it's like a big flash of white light. He can do it much quicker than they can, and he can also heal things that they wouldn't be able to heal. God is healing Harrow. She's looking at the body in the corner and says, God, what did you bury in the tomb? And God says, a monster. The body looks at Harrow. Then God reads her a poem. He reads her the Annabelle Lee poem. And then that night, Harrow and the body hug. Flashback, it's raining real hard at Canaan House, and Harrow keeps hearing crying. We found the bodies of Sextus and Hecht. That's a shame. Good thing Harrow was not super close to them. And they can't find Ianthe. They can't find Corona. So there's no one to do flesh magician things to inspect those bodies, except, oh my gosh, 7th house just rolled up. Dulcinea, who Abigail very cutely calls Dulcie, does some detective work on the two bodies, whom she calls Pal and Cam, and they talk about the sleeper, who Ordis thinks they should call the waker. Damn, Sin, you can't keep getting away with this. It's raining so hard in Canaan House that the rooms are starting to flood. Abigail's sending them all off to do different things, and Dulcinea's like, is this how it happens, Lady Pent? Abigail tells her no. Dulcie says, does it get better than this? Harrow finds another piece of paper. She's not really paying attention to that conversation. Him, I'll unalive quick because she asked me to, and because that much he honestly deserves. But you two mummified wizard shits, I will burn and burn and burn and burn until there is no trace of you left in the shadow of my long lost natal son. Ordis tells Harrow that paper just has a picture on it. It's a drawing of the letter S, 6 short marks stacked vertically 3 by 3. Present day, sort of. Now we are the night after Harrow unalived that 13th planet. And the body starts telling her, Harrow, wake up. So Harrow wakes up. And that's really good because Kitharea's in the hallway. And Kitharea starts running at Harrow. Harrow understandably runs away back into her room, and Harrow does a really good little ward on the door. No one should be able to touch that door. And then as Harrow is hiding there, the handle starts to rattle. Harrow opens the door. There's no one out there. Harrow runs over to Ianthe's room and says, Septimus is walking? Ianthe slams the door in Harrow's face. We're now 4 months before the Emperor's unalived. As Harrow's walking around the Mithram, okay, so like the way that the space station thingy's built, they have a tomb for Cytherea, but it's just like another room, right? It's not like Earth where you could like bury her in the ground or something. She's just kind of like has a coffin in a room. And Harrow was walking past that room. There's so many things that happen in these books where I'm like, how do I talk about this without getting removed from the internet? If you weren't ready to hear about some of the things I'm going to tell you by this point, you would no longer be here, right? So I can tell you this. I can tell you that Harrow sees the Saint of Duty, Ortis, canoodling with Cytherea's body, right? Harrow, disturbed, goes to Ianthe and says, I caught the Saint of Duty in the throes of grave lust. They have a conversation about necrophilia. Then they fantasize about offing each other. Harrow on the Mithraeum turns 18. It's my birthday. But obviously Harrow's never had a birthday party in her life. She doesn't ice a cake like a normal person, the narrator tells us, because on Harrow's birthday she just mourns those kids. Harrow's room, because the Saint of Duty, Ortis, keeps attacking her, she has all of these really good wards on her rooms. One day, Harrow's in the bathtub. The Saint of Duty bursts through the door and spears her again. Because the Saint of Duty's spirit magic, his specialty, is that he can just undo wards. He can strip the energy. Harrow has no sword. Harrow has no bones to do bone magic with because she was in the bathtub. Being a feral cat, throws herself at him, uses her own bones to attack him. She tooths him in the eye. He leaves. This is why anytime Harrow has her titties out, someone almost dies. This time it was Harrow. Oh my god, who was it last time? Ortis? Anyway, Harrow is lying half dead on the floor. Dude, this part. Harrow doesn't super mind that she's half dead on the floor. Like, she can stitch all that up, right? But the part that she doesn't feel fine about is that she's never going to feel safe again. She can't keep herself safe from Ortis. She's never going to be able to sleep again. So in that moment, when Ianthe walks in, Harrow knows that she'd cling to her. She doesn't care that, like, yeah, Ianthe probably wants to hurt me. So it's probably good that Ianthe took one look at Harrow, said, wow, not how I imagined this happening at all, and then walked away. That's when Harrow decides that she has to take out the Saint of Duty. The body from the corner of the bathroom says, yeah. Next time that Harrow's talking to God, she tells him about the whole seeing Ortis, the Saint of Duty, kissing Cytherea thing. God's like, are you sure you're not seeing things, Harrow? Because we've been around a long time. I've seen all of the lictors having love affairs, usually with each other.
Name something you'd do if your husband made reservations for the two of you on a swingers cruise.
Invite my best friend.
Ortis never once an amorous guy. The only time that he was sort of interested in anybody was Pyrrha, who was his cavalier, and then the criminals that he hunts down, because Ortis is like God's, they call him his attack dog. God sends the Saint of Duty off to go take people out. The Saint of Duty, Ortis, kicked that Blood of Eden commander out of an airlock 19 years ago, and that's the happiest God's ever seen him. And God's like, Harrow, you gotta take care of yourself. Cook something, read a book, get some rest. You really look like you haven't slept. At this point, Harrow has not slept in 48 hours. She hasn't slept since the Saint of Duty Ortis attacked her in the bathtub.
You can't spend the rest of your life alone, dressed in black and staying up all night.
Yes, I can.
For some reason, and Harrow doesn't know why, God won't stop the Saint of Duty Ortis from trying to unalive her. Harrow losing her religion with each conversation with John. She's like, that's just some guy. So Harrow does do something normal. Harrow makes soup. Has not slept in 86 hours. During this time period of Harrow reading cookbook, making soup, not sleeping, Harrow also prays a lot in her room. She doesn't sleep. She just sits there and prays. During this time, Augustine tells Ianthe, if you cannot get it together and learn to use your arm to actually fight properly, I'm not going to train you anymore. You're just like Harrow, completely useless. Harrow makes some more soup, makes so much soup that God's like, you know what? Harrow looks like she's getting really into cooking. Why don't we have dinner together? Because they do have these sort of family dinners as the lictors. And this soup that she makes for the lictors and God. She's very careful. This has to be perfect. God serves everybody as usual. He's so happy with her. She did a great job. She made soup. She made something. She read a book. It's the little things in life. All the lictors start to eat the soup. They're like, this is just kind of meh soup.
You don't have anything to say to me?
Sweet potatoes are bland.
Not enough salt. Too liquidy. It's not thick enough. Ain't they? Eating her soup. Says Harrow, what kind of meat is this? 126 hours without sleep, Harrow's thinking. And she's like, what is that word called? What is the word for that thing I put in the soup? It's marrow? And the saint of duty Ortis explodes outwards as a skeleton climbs out of him. Harrow put her own bone marrow in the soup?
I love the combination of gummy bears with meat.
Harrow hark nonagesimus. Harrow hark nonagesimus. Harrow hark nonagesimus. So, obviously, everything's super nasty. God says stop. And Harrow's like, God, that man right there, he attacks me all the time. I can't live like this, God. I have nowhere to go. I have no one. I am a nonsense. Dude, Harrow in this book, I just want to wrap her in a blanket, give her some room temperature water and saltines, which you probably wouldn't like. They used to be a cracker that has no salt on it. Anyway, to all that, God does not say, okay, Harrow, I'll stop the saint of duty from trying to unalive you every time you sleep. God just says, Harrow, when was the last time you slept? Harrow says 6 days. God uses his God magic to put the saint of duty back together and says dinner's over and they put Harrow to bed. Augustine and Mercy are both shaking, as you would be if you just saw a 9-year-old make soup and then explode someone with a skeleton out of the soup. And they carries Harrow out of the room. Harrow stares at Ortis. The saint of duty really, really stares at him hard. The saint of duty, Ortis, just stares at her and salutes her. Is that part super nasty? Yeah. Is that part also one of my favorites? Yeah, the soup memes that came out of this book. In Harrow's memory of what happened at Canaan House, Silas Octokizaron, who I think I get him and Colum confused a lot, but Silas was the necromancer. Silas just pushed Coronabeth Tridentarius into the ocean, and then he says some weird things to Harrow, including, is this how it happens? And then he jumps off into the sea too. The next time Harrow is conscious, she's in Ianthe's bed, which Harrow panics about, as you would if you came to consciousness in Ianthe Tridentarius's bed. Ianthe's just standing there doing sword exercises. She tells Harrow that if the Saint of Duty, Ortis, attacks her right now, she'll welcome it. Really wants to fight something anyway, so it'll be fine. Oh my god. Ianthe. Harrow falls asleep. Okay, the soup scene is quickly followed by another infamous scene. Harrow's super vulnerable right now, right? And Harrow's finally gotten the chance to sleep. Feeling a lot of feelings towards Ianthe right now. Remember that thing where if Ianthe had come to her in that moment, she would have clung to her? We are about to cling to Ianthe Tridentarius like it's nobody's business, and like nobody should. Harrow wakes up to see Ianthe on the floor, trying to remove her own arm, like that arm that they sewed on, because she's just so frustrated that it doesn't work. But she can't get it off because her body keeps healing it. She looks like she is Ianthe, I hate myself Tridentarius, which usually Ianthe doesn't look like that. She usually looks like Ianthe, I super love myself and my twin Tridentarius. Harrow kneels on the floor next to Ianthe and says it needs to come off all at once. Harrow removes Ianthe's kind of crappy replacement arm, straddles her, and grows her a new one out of bone. All that, right? That sounds like kind of normal. for this series, for this book, in which the skeleton just came out of the man who ate the bone marrow soup. But the way this scene is written, this is 100% a Smex scene, except like logistically. In every way that it matters, that was a spicy scene. Moving on. In Harrow's memories of Canaan House, all the rooms are flooding. They're all having to stay in one room, and that's everyone who's still alive. Remember, everyone who is still alive from Canaan House is Harrow, Ordis, her cavalier, Abigail Pent, Magnus Quinn, Dulcinea Septimus, Septimus's cavalier per Tessalawis, and Marta. Where are the fourth house teens? Abigail looks at Harrow. I moved them on already. Abigail, Magnus, and Harrow have a little coffee. Harrow's like, yeah, I didn't tell you this, but about a week ago, I saw Corona, Ianthe, and Silas die. And Magnus and Abigail are like, why didn't you tell us that? And Harrow says, because I have a touch of the madness and I wasn't sure it was real. And Abigail tells her, you know what? Actually, you having a touch of the madness, that makes a lot of sense. That sounds just about right, Harrow. To add some other thoughts to this, what could possibly be happening here with your mind, have you ever considered that you might also be haunted? Abigail gives Harrow a piece of paper to read. I will remember the first time you kissed me. You apologized. You said, I'm sorry, destroy me as I am, but I want to kiss you before I am unalived. And I said to you, why? And you said, because I have only once met someone so utterly willing to burn for what they believed in. And I loved him on sight. And the first time I died, I asked of him what I now ask of you. I kissed you, and later I would kiss him too, before I understood what you were. And all three of us lived to regret it. But when I am in heaven, I will remember your mouth. And when you roast down in hell, I think you will remember mine. A throuple? In Harrow's deluded notes? Abigail tells us what the paper really says. I still get an erotic charge from snakes. Sorry to say. This was meant to be party Harrow mode, but I don't know if you can actually see me. I also don't know if I can read, period, but like in the dark. Ianthe, equipped with brand new arm, which does work. We've solved the problem of Ianthe not being able to fight. She's made it all gold. Now when the resurrection beast comes, Ianthe will be fine. Harrow, you're still gonna eat it. Anyhow, Harrow and Ianthe have started sleeping together. Not like that. This is the only place Harrow now feels safe. That Harrow feels like she can sleep, and she hates it. She's got to put up with a lot of comments from Ianthe about this, but she does it. Harrow is not used to sleeping with people. She's never done that in any sense of the word, which Ianthe knows. Ianthe is really missing Corona Beth. And Ianthe asks Harrow if she regrets anything. If she regrets Canaan House. If she regrets becoming a lector. And Harrow says no. Ianthe says, well, yeah, you wouldn't. You were more farsighted than I was. Harrow thinks that was an odd thing to say. Here's the thing. When Ianthe got her new arm, hello, I probably shouldn't point this out, but I just can't help it. There's nothing in my nose. My nose just looks like that inside. The light is reflecting off of my fucking deviated septum, okay? And the haters are gonna say 30 people subscribed to me. Friends and family are gonna say, Kalia, you're just saying that. No, I know there's nothing in my nose because I like triple checked, dude, before I filmed that. It's the light from my shell lamp in my giant ass nose, okay? You know who likes my nose? Your mom. She's like, okay, Harrow, I'm not gonna thank you for that because I know you liked that. But I will help you unalive the Saint of Duty. And this plan was concocted in part by Augustine. What's up with the lictors wanting to unalive each other? Aren't they supposed to be the best friends of the god in the universe? Yeah, well, okay, Augustine says that the Saint of Duty, Ordis, has not been listening to anyone for a long time. Someone's really gotta take him out. And you know what? We got 3 working lictors. Without him, Mercy, we have Augustine, we have Ianthe. We'll be fine. Ianthe and Harrow wake up to an invitation from Augustine to a formal dinner. Ianthe gets very excited about this because she can play dress up with Harrow. We're about to get to a point where I am going to insist on reading it to you just straight up from the book. Ianthe says, Harry, have you never read a trashy novel in which the... Okay, why is my Ianthe voice just Jennifer Coolidge?
Harry. In which the hero gets a life-affirming change of clothes and some makeup, and then goes to the party and everyone says things like, "By the Emperor's bones, but you're beautiful,"
You said emphatically. No. Harrow's never read anything but electoral theorems and whatever their Bible is. Sometimes I think you look like a twig's funeral.
I'm sick of being associated with a half-snapped stick of licorice dressed in a tent.
I don't think I've done that for any of the other parts. Ianthe fashions a mini dress. A tiny little black, sparkly, what Harrow refers to as a handkerchief for Harrow, who is shocked and appalled and refuses to remove her bone corset. She also refuses any earrings that aren't bones. Have I mentioned that, like, Harrow uses her jewelry as bone weapons, which is... She's such a little... Damn, but sometimes she does cool things. Ianthe continues to hit on Harrow. Harrow continues to be unnerved by it, but a little bit attracted to, like, the comfort of it. Harrow, baby. And they go meet up with Augustine for the murder plan.
So we're blowing up Todd after dinner.
Harrow's going to do the actual unaliving. Ianthe's not helping her with that. Augustine's not helping her with that. But Augustine's doing the distraction. He says, "I'll give you a signal, and then you two leave. I'm not going to tell you what the signal is, because then God will know. And I'll do something before that, and it'll make Ortis leave. Because when I want Ortis gone, he'll be giddy gone." And that joke makes no sense to Harrow. Mercy's apparently a part of the plan. Remember, Mercy and Augustine really, really hate each other. He says, "We're doing Deus Appeti Minor." And Mercy punches him in the face. They have a weird, wordless conversation, which sometimes the lictors do. But apparently, we're doing the plan. They all head out. They all head to dinner. 2 hours into the dinner, and Harrow had to eat the dinner. They are drinking so much wine. They're all very disheveled, pink-cheeked. God keeps giving her water and saying, "Keep drinking water, Harrow." They just keep doing toasts. And Harrow hates toast because every time that they do a toast, they have to drink more wine. Ianthe is having the best time ever. Ianthe's watching God and the 2 old lictors get super drunk, and is also drinking wine and seeing Harrow get drunk, and is like, "This is the best night of my life. This is exactly what I thought it would be like to be a lictor." Ianthe in her little gauzy purple dress. Trident Terrii do like to wear little frilly nightgowns, which Ianthe has been wearing, but they also just like pretty things. So she wears a lot of gauzy little outfits. Ianthe adds 2 our enemies to the roster of cheers, and they say, "Yeah, to Blood of Eden, to the commander." 50 years ago, Blood of Eden found out about the resurrection beasts. There was some spying going on. Some of the rebels found a resurrection beast and unalived a herald. And then out of that herald, little geniuses that they are, they made a bunch of weapons and armor. And since the lictors get so scared, these weapons, very effective. Augustine says that Commander had herald bullets, and that one time she got him right between the eyes. Should we toast to her? We should absolutely toast to her. To Commander Wake. The Saint of Duty stands and leaves. Augustine got the Saint of Duty giddy gone. God says, that's all right. Let him go. I'm just happy to see you two, Mercy and Augustine, getting along again. I've had such a great time. Harrow, you haven't drunk too much, have you? The narrator tells us that Harrow has had way too much to drink. Harrow's wasted. Harrow says no. Ianthe says yeah. Puts her arm around Harrow. Everything's coming up, Ianthe. And says, "Let me welcome you to sisterhood." Wait.
"Let me welcome you to sisterhood."
Harrow's like, "I don't want anything to do with whatever sisterhood is to you, Ianthe." God's like, "Yeah, to sisters." Augustine says, "To women we've left behind." God looks unhappy at that. And they all say, "Oh, sorry, God. Sorry, not like that." Weird. Anyway, Mercy says, "To God, the Emperor, to John Gaius, the Necrolord Prime, the best man who ever lived." And Harrow does drink to that. Drunk Harrow Harkonnen Decimus Crux rolling in his grave even though he's not dead. But Harrow drinks for real this time because she believes in God. And because Ianthe's staring at her like she doesn't think Harrow's going to drink, so then Harrow drinks more. And then Mercy says, "I wish Kithareo was here." Augustine's like, "I don't think so. We would have had to play who had the hottest cavalier." And my answer never changed. Pira Dve was hot. John, God, the Necrolord Prime, stares at Augustine and says, "Not as much as a bombshell as your mother." Harrow really, really wants to leave. She thought being a lictor would be a lot of praying, a lot of learning, a lot of quiet time and contemplation. She did not think she'd spend it in a mini dress, drunk, with the Ante touching her hair while God makes your mom jokes. And then Harrow wants to leave even more because Augustine and Mercy kiss. They kiss like they kiss. And then Augustine kisses God. That makes Harrow temporarily an atheist. Then Mercy kisses God? Ianthe's trying to get Harrow's attention. Harrow was a bit busy having an aneurysm. Not really. He's not actually bleeding anywhere this time. Eventually, Ianthe manages to run them out of the room. Harrow still looking over her shoulder at the three of them who have started to make out on the table. This is the worst thing Harrow's ever seen. So that was the signal. Ianthe says, usually when three people start kissing, that's the cue to leave, like as a blanket rule. Harrow says, "Thank you, Ianthe." Ianthe leans in to kiss Harrow. It's kissing night on the Mithraeum.
Let's go, gay people!
But Harrow just in time turns her head. Harrow whispers, "My affections lie buried in the locked tomb." Because of course they do, girl. She doesn't mean that like she's a nun. Ianthe waltzes off, shoes in hand.
It's a temporary setback.
Good luck, Harry. Try not to die.
That voice is changing every time I do it. Harrow heads off to go take out the Sane of Duty. She's sweating all of her alcohol out because she can do that. Handy thing being a lictor. She opens up the door of the training room and rolls this ball of bones in. He's not in there. The room's destroyed, but he's not there. Harrow's like, "Great. This is what happens when I rely on people." But then Harrow finds a trail of blood, and she follows that trail of blood to the incinerator room. Why are we always going to incinerators? In the incinerator is the Saint of Duty. He's like alive, but he has been run through. And when Harrow looks to the control booth that you use to turn on the incinerator, Kithorea's in there. And she's staring at Harrow as she flips the switch. And then walks off. Harrow looks in the burning furnace, sees Ortis, and for some reason he's not doing necromancy. Harrow sees him. He's like, "Yeah, I should probably just wait, and then I'm gonna make a new fancy skeleton out of his ashes. I'm gonna sleep in my own bed all by myself for 6 hours." But then Harrow opens the door, and she has to do a bunch of necromancy stuff to like get around the burning furnace. Yanks the Saint of Duty out of the furnace. His eyes are still closed. He says, "Use fresh blood wards every night. Can't break those. You'll be safe from us." Blood wards have more thalergy because they're fresh, and the Saint of Duty can only undo thanergy. As long as she's replenishing the blood wards, like he can't get in, he can't undo those. What a nice thing of him to tell us. Then he says some other really weird stuff. It's like he's not talking to Harrow. Harrow's trying to ask Ortis, the Saint of Duty, what that was about, but he's just like, I don't know. I don't remember anything that just happened. Sometimes I forget things. God doesn't know if he believes Harrow's story. Harrow doesn't know if she believes her story. Everyone's very confused, but they can't find Kithorea's body. Harrow finally gets to lie down, and the body says, "The water is risen. So is the sun. We will endure." Inspirational quotes brought to you by The Body. Where are you? Harrow's off to unalive her 14th planet. Unlike the others that Harrow's been unaliving, this one is very alive. It has lots of plants, little worms in the dirt. If the resurrection beast gets a hold of this one, it's a juicy snack. No one else wants to do it. And Mercy's off to go do the moon while Harrow does this one. It's the first time she's really been left alone to do something like this. Harrow's mental health, still not great. They never found Kithorea's body. And God, Augustine, and Mercy are acting completely normal. Too normal for Harrow. Makes Harrow suspect that they've done this threesome thing before. Doesn't know how she feels about that. She feels like she maybe wants to give herself a lobotomy about it. Harrow hark nonagesimus. You can't joke about lobotomies. Anyhow, the Saint of Duty has only tried to unalive her another 2 times. Her blood wards have been holding, all in all. I think correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I'm pretty sure what they do is that they have to go to this specific point on the planet and then they kind of stab it. So the physical part, they've made some sort of mark, and then with their spirits they go in the river, and that's when they go find the soul and they unalive the soul. I don't know, but Harrow has to get to a certain part of the planet, and in order to do that she's got to hike. Harrow Harknonogesimus has to go on a hike through trees up a hill, but Harrow is also Harrow Harknonogesimus, so she makes the giant skeleton to carry her baby style, and Harrow's looking all around her at this beautiful green planet, and it has this beautiful blue ginormous ocean. That's where a lot of the life is on the planet that makes it so juicy in the sun, with all the trees and all the greenery, with the blue sky. Harrow feels like she has the capacity to be happy again. And then Harrow realizes she's being followed. Little Lictor Powers, that's a human woman. The human woman comes into the clearing. A woman with a gray robe, dark eyes, 2 swords, a bag full of thanergy, and a hell of a bob. It's Camilla Hecht! And the crowd went wild, except for Harrow. Harrow begins to bleed out of her ears. As Cam tries to approach her, Harrow's stepping back. No, she does not know this woman. This woman, she watched her get unalived by the sleeper at Canaan House. Harrow, still bleeding, has enough sense left to fish out one of her letters, because remember, she has a letter for Camilla Hecht, and she gives that letter to Camilla, who opens it and does like a triple take between the letter and Harrow, looking increasingly shocked, which is a weird expression for Camilla. Not that Harrow would know that. Essentially, the letter said Harrow will consider Camilla's life sacred, and anytime Camilla invokes the locked tomb, Harrow will do whatever she wants, because Harrow will always try and help Camilla however she can, in thanks for everything that the Sixth did. Harrow says, I was promiscuous with my past favors. Harrow says, why are you here? How are you here? Hesitantly, she approaches Harrow and passes Harrow that little bag of thanergy, a piece of skull, male, early 20s, and that skull has been put back together, not by necromancy. Teeny tiny pieces, hand by hand, with glue. I'm not crying. You are. Harrow's eyes are bleeding at this point as she looks at the skull. Her head really hurts. Camilla says, he's still in there. That's why I came all the way here to find you. Harrow says, no, he can't be in here. A ghost can't be attached to an immobile object for this long. 8 months? Impossible. Camilla says, well, he would. He's stubborn. And also, he did something necromantically to stick his soul to his body in case this happened. We planned for it, but then he sort of went out in a way we didn't plan for. So I don't know if I got the right piece of his body. I just need you to check and make sure he's in there. So Harrow sits down and drops her soul into the river. Instead of finding herself in dirty water, Harrow finds herself in a little room with a little bed, with a little shelf, with a singular book called The Necromancer's Marriage Season. It's a historical, said a voice behind you. Abella Trine, inevitably of Ida, is considered a poor prospect on the marriage market because she's too skinny. Her tracked specialist flesh magic is too good, and she wears her thick chestnut hair in an unflattering bun, which is mentioned at least twice a chapter. Harrow turns to see a man. Tall, gray robes, gray eyes. Long time no see, Reverend daughter. Calamity Sextus hugs Harrow Hark so hard that he lifts her up. Harrow Harknotogesimus says, excuse me! Calamity says, sorry, misread the moment. Is Camilla okay? Harrow says, she sent me. She's alive. He said a little unsteadily, thank God for that mad, stubborn, lovely girl. Harrow has no letter for Calamities. Even if she did have one, she wouldn't have been able to bring it in with her because her body's not here. Remember, it's just her spirit. Calamities, because he was exploding, didn't have that much time, and he anchored himself to his body by a bunch of little strands of magic. He made a little bubble in the river for his soul, with the room around him being that room, the medical wing, like the last thing he saw. And then it's tethered to his physical body by a bunch of little strings of magic. So it's not enough for him to be able to follow one of those strings back. He doesn't know which piece Camilla has. Harrow says, you can't do that. He says, no, you can. The river just rejects everything that lies outside it. Remember, big liminal space. He has a sense of self, but no necromancy. Harrow sits down, her mind a little bit blown. Palamedes just says, how long have I been gone? 8 months? What do you mean 8 months? That should have taken you a week. A little bit affronted, Harrow says, well, your cavalier just brought it to me now. Palamedes says, what? How did you and Camilla even get separated? She wouldn't have left your side if you'd given her half a chance. Harrow gets really frustrated. I am Harrow Hark the First. I am the 9th saint. I did not know you in this life, and I will not know you in the next one. And Palamedes stops dead. You became a lictor. Tell me you did it right. You, out of everyone, could have figured out the end to the beginning that I was just beginning to understand. Your cavalier, reverend daughter, has become the furnace of my lictorhood. Palamedes just stares at her. How God takes and takes and takes. Then there's an explosive noise, like a bunch of thunder. There's a window looking out into the courtyard of Canaan House. Suddenly it's raining, and there's a person in that orange space hazmat suit thing with a giant gun staring at them. Harrow says, it's the sleeper. Palamedes and Harrow run to the door, lock it, barricade it. Palamedes says, this can't be happening. I can't change this space, but you could have brought something in with you. You could have changed it. Hopefully, if you leave right now, that thing leaves with you before it unalives me. Palamedes needs to know what part Camilla has so that he can strengthen that little thread and hopefully follow that down to then inhabit the object and do whatever the thing is that they're trying to do. They're struggling to keep the door closed, to keep that thing out. And they bop heads. Palamedes turns to Harrow, grinning, smooches her on the forehead. He tells her to run, get out, go. Harrow's spirit leaves. She's still confused. The narrator tells us that, Harrow, you never could have guessed that he had seen me. Harrow wakes up back in her body in a tent with Camilla. There's also a shuttle near them, not a cohort shuttle. Obviously, there's no bones. It reeks of oil. Yucky. I like my ships covered in bone. Thank you very much. Harrow tells Camilla about what happened. And because Harrow is a curious little lady, pops over to look inside the shuttle. She finds 2 people. Judith Deuteros, necromancer of the 2nd house. Coronabeth Tridentarius. Also a giant poster of an unsmiling woman with thick, curly, red hair. And when Harrow sees this poster, obviously her nose starts to bleed again, but she also gets more scared than she's ever been. She is certain she's never seen this face before. Harrow pulls out her letters. Unlike the letter for Camilla, there's no letter for Corona or Judith. There's just letters for Harrow to read if she sees Corona or Judith. If you see Judith, silence her. So Harrow silences her with bone magic. The one for Corona, that says to protect Coronabeth at all costs. That same deal that Harrow made with the Anthe to like the favor of the chain, whatever, that also applies to Coronabeth. But she can also silence her. But Harrow just wants them to tell her, why are you here? Why are you alive? I don't understand. Judith, who Harrow undoes the locked jaw thing for a minute, says, warn him, Lictor. He's been infiltrated. If you love him, the traitor has already... Corona shuts Judith's mouth before she can tell Harrow who the traitor is. Camilla says to Harrow, we're not on the same side anymore. I owe you my life, but things have changed, and I'm sorry. Harrow says, okay. Who took you away from Canaan House? Who are you with? Camilla says, you call them Blood of Eden. Back at Canaan House, Harrow is eavesdropping on Abigail and Ortis. Ortis wants Abigail to try and summon something, but she's sort of explaining the rules of her necromancy, right? Abigail is a speaker to the dead. She can summon people based on things that they've touched, things that they've made. I can't summon someone from a sword that they barely touch. There needs to be like a real connection there. And sorry, Ortis, but that's just not enough. Also, hi, Harrow. I can hear you in the hallway. And Abigail asks Harrow, okay, well, what are we doing now? Maybe this book is a 9 out of 10 on the gore scale. The house is really cold. It's freezing. And all the cracks and like the windows and stuff are being covered in viscera. Real nasty stuff. Teacher wanders in. He has a rainbow sash and sandals. He says something wild. The new lictors found out the price, and they wanted him to unalive the saltwater creature before she could do them harm. But it is a tragedy to be put in a box and laid to rest for all time. It happened to me, but I was only a man. Well, 50 men. It's coming for you, Reverend daughter, and once it's got you, once that rock's rolled away, once that tomb's levered open, the Emperor of the 9 Houses will never know peace again. Also, like, I wouldn't mind passing away. Into the river with us, boys. 50 can school like fishes. And he skips off anyway. 1 week before the Emperor's murder. Oh, Jesus. To be completely honest and real, this point onwards, when I read this, I cry the whole time. A constant stream of tears down my face. 1 week before the Emperor's murder, Harrow begins to pray again. She's not really praying to anyone anymore. God's kind of a loser, not that Harrow thinks that. She just doesn't know what to do. Every time she thinks about what happened on that planet, her nose starts to bleed. Someone on the Mithraeum is a traitor. Someone's filling in blood of Eden on everything that's happening. They get their first glimpse of the resurrection beast of the heralds. Mercy's the one who spotted the resurrection beast, and she says, it's blue and it knows what you did and it sees my cavalier's soul burning in my chest. The resurrection beasts, they're hunting the lictors specifically because of the sin, what they did to their cavaliers. The resurrection beasts can see the soul that they're using, and it's not just revenge, it's retribution. It's fine, they all go back to bed. As Harrow lays on her bed next to the body's eyes are super wide. It's coming, the body says. It's near. Harrow is a little surprised. The body doesn't usually show emotion like that. Harrow looks at the body, looks at her mouth, at her eyes. Harrow tries to kiss her. Tries being the operative word. When Harrow gets a little kind of close to the body faces it away. And Harrow says, please. This happens another 3 times. Harrow trying to seduce the body and the body moving away from Harrow. The body says, I have to go away. Harrow panicked. Oh my God, the body is rejecting me. He says, I have done wrong. And the body frowns and says, how? The body goes up to Harrow, closes her eyes, and Harrow falls asleep. In the morning, the body's gone. They do some battle briefing, the lictors and God. There's some lictor shenanigans. Mercy draws a shape and they all argue about what it is. I love skits where people do this. There are 4 layers to the river. Do you need to know the names? Probably not, but I'll tell you. The bottom layer is Barathron. The strategy they have to do this in the river. That's where the brain, as they call it, of the resurrection beast is. The resurrection beast is very fluid. It's not one thing. They list off some of the things that the other resurrection beasts have been. Liquid steel, flying head with fish fins, wonky town, crazy hour in the river fighting the resurrection beast. Okay, when they go into the river to fight the resurrection beast, as we've discussed so many times, they're not taking their body with them as they would be if they were traveling, from the Mithraeum to the 9 Houses. They'd be dropping their body and their spirit down into the river. Other people can't travel in the river like the lictors can, and that strategy that they have took a long time to develop. Augustine's the one who figured that out. He's the river expert. His specialty is river magic. Anyway, so Barathron, bottom layer of the river. At the bottom of the river, it's not just river abyss. It's riverbed. There are these things they call stoma, mouths to hell, chaos. Okay, and those mouths only open up when the resurrection beast comes by. Those are the portals that they try and force the resurrection beast down into. No one has ever come out of those mouths. Portals. They spend a lot of time practicing. I've been avoiding saying exactly what's in the river, but I think I just have to now. There's a lot of human parts. So they're kind of going around in there, fishing up stuff and doing little blood and bone wards and stuff. And Harrow's on the riverbank picking up actual sticks, pieces of rock, and grass. When they all go back to their bodies, everybody's standing up except Harrow, who's on the ground because her body doesn't work when her spirit leaves it. God calls Harrow in for a chat. God really wants Harrow to go in the god panic room with him. So when the resurrection beast comes, God doesn't fight with the lictors. They squirrel God away. And Harrow, eating her cracker, says, God, why do we lock you in a panic room if you're God? God says that long ago I did the great resurrection and reunited the star, Dominicus. If I went under, the sun would go out. It would actually turn into a giant black hole and suck all of the planets in, the 9 houses. So God doesn't really want to risk that happening by fighting the resurrection beast. Harrow is on a roll with her questions, so she asks him, who was Ael? Ael was the first thing that God made after he remade all of the planets. She wasn't a normal human. She'd get really angry. Once we had all the necromancer cavaliers and we did the lictorhood and the resurrection beasts came after us, Ael died in that first conflict. I like to think that she would have liked you. You'd make a hell of a daughter, Harrow. I'd like you as my own. Harrow has some daddy issues, you could say. So Harrow jumps on the table, kneels on the broken water glass and says, God, I broke into the locked tomb. God says, no, you didn't. She describes the whole thing. She says, did I unalive 2 of my fathers that day? God repeats himself. He's like, Harrow, honey, there's no way you got in there. Maybe you did the first door. You would have to be a necromantic genius to get through that, but no matter how good of a necromancer someone is, you can't get into that tomb. You would have needed my blood to do it. So that's the key to open the final door of the locked tomb. It's a pure blood ward made by God himself. Harrow, who loves and believes in God, starts to doubt herself. After all, she's mad, and nobody ever saw her go into the tomb. So Harrow doesn't tell him about the body. God just tucks a piece of hair behind Harrow's ear and says, who the hell has been tampering with your temporal lobe? As Harrow is stewing, the body hasn't come back since Harrow hit on her 3 times. That girl in that tomb, she probably never existed. What's the point of putting on paint in the morning? She's writing in her diary about how much she doesn't have, and she drops her pen. Harrow leans over to grab it and sees under the bed Cytherea. Every time. She's the Danica Fendir of the locked tomb. But Cytherea is not moving. She looks limp. She looks empty. She just looks like what she is, a deceased person. Harrow locks her to the ground with some bones and runs off to go get Ianthe. Ianthe got a little bit excited because Harrow was dragging her frantically into her bedroom. Ianthe looks under the bed. There's no one under there. Harrow gets down and double checks. And Harrow confirms, that's Cytherea right there. Ianthe says, no one's there, Harrow. There's no body under there. Are you sure you're all right? She leaves. Harrow goes to splash her face with some water, takes some centering deep breaths, and when she goes back and looks under the bed again, Cytherea's not there. The Saint of Duty tries to unalive her again. Harrow just gets mad. Why are you trying to unalive me? I'm gonna die anyway. And he says, this wasn't even my idea, and walks off. Harrow has never been so angry, and it's not because she's going to die. It's because she's going to die with so many unanswered questions. The narrator tells Harrow she was always such a little bitch when she was angry. The heralds arrive, pelting the ship. The lictors sitting inside start to feel the fear. Herald fear is real. Harrow starts to shake. She's sweating. She's screaming. Everything gets very cold. And it's time to go fight the resurrection beast. We jump back to 9 months and a couple days before the Emperor's murder. 3rd person limited Ianthe POV. We know this is Ianthe POV because Ianthe keeps thinking about how Harrow's face would make an excellent painting. This is when Harrow gave Ianthe those letters. This is old Harrow. Harrow, completely head shaved, is sitting in front of a mirror, and Ianthe has a bunch of tools. She has a hammer, an awl, a scalpel, a spray bottle, and 2 mirrors. Ianthe says, are you sure that you want to do this? Because it's probably not going to work. And Ianthe Tridentarius says this. It's totally fucking demented. Ianthe really wants Harrow to tell her the plan. Harrow won't tell her. Harrow says, I asked you to do this with me because you know what it is to be fractured. And Ianthe tells Harrow, this isn't going to help. you, Harrow, Hark, and Onesimus, are just running away. And they stare at each other in the mirror. And one of Harrow's eyes is gold. Harrow says, we're wasting time. And they just says, it will be worse for you in the end. But she helps Harrow give herself a lobotomy. After the lobotomy, Harrow is sleeping. Anthe, creepy Anthe style, creeps up and is feeling around Harrow's head, trying to figure out what she did. And she can't figure it out. So she just decides to be really petty and make Harrow have really good hair follicles. So Harrow's hair grows really fast. Harrow likes to shave the head, and her hair just keeps growing. Always touching her neck, and she really does not like the feel of his hair. But she cuts her hair, and then she wakes up the next day, and it's growing back. As Anthe looks at sleeping Harrow, Anthe thinks, what a fool. What a destructive, romantic, ridiculous act. It was always a certain kind of ass who approached love like that. A certain kind of very talented ass who had been overly used to their hands on the reins and never could cope when they were taken off, nor had the personality to put them back on again. Anthe had that kind of personality, and she had a few years on Harrow. Someday, I'll marry that girl. It might be good for her. Probably not, though.
I think I messed it up. How much coffee per cup of coffee? Okay, well, I was supposed to only put in 1 cup of water. What do I do? That's why I buy my coffees. Wait 4 minutes and stir. Shit, I didn't stir it. This is not the right color. This is coffee water.
Sorry, actually, that's not how any of that Canaan House stuff from like the sleeper and the everybody leaping into the ocean, that wasn't how it happened at all. Actually, Harrow was sword fighting. Harrow Nova is the fastest, coolest cavalier ever. She's indebted to the necromantic heir, but everyone's not nice to her. But she's dueling Ortis for the position of cavalier primary to the adopted daughter of the 9th house people who are in charge, because she's going to Canaan House to become a lictor, and Harrow wants to go with her. Crux walks in and tells them off for fighting in a church and says, go apologize to those pilgrims in the pews. So Harrow Nova goes over to apologize to the pilgrims in the pews. And they're a man and a woman, a married couple. Except, how did she know that they were married? This isn't how it happened, said Abigail. Sorry. Okay, did I say that Harrow was sword fighting? No. Harrow, Hark, Nonagesimus, hates the classical music being played in the warm candlelit amphitheater. She hates all the crowds of people. She hates being here. But, it's probably good that it's dark and a little bit crowded, because then no one can tell that her dress is old and tattered and her crown is rusty. Even if they could see it, it's fine. Everyone already knows that the 9th house is poor. Harrow never intended to compete in this competition to be the bride of her divine highness. She's still probably not pretty enough, but everyone's dancing. It's lovely. Harrow can see a very tall 3rd house princess over there next to the 6th house. Harrow feels afraid. Lady Abigail Pent eyes Harrow, Hark, Nonagesimus, and says, I'm so sad to crash this one. Magnus says, yeah, food sucks, Harrow. How did you know what party food tastes like? Have you been to a party? Ortis says, yeah, can we just let it play out? I want to see where this one goes. But Abigail tells Harrow, this still isn't how it happens. So, okay, romance novel, sword fighting, Canaan House. No. Harrow comes out of a briefing meeting in the cohort, and she starts talking to these 2 really young soldiers. They're so young. How do they have so many medals? They introduce themselves as Lieutenant Chator and Lieutenant Teteris. And they say, you know what? You have to try the coffee here. The coffee here's amazing. Harrow doesn't want coffee. She doesn't want to go to the cafeteria, but for some reason she's in the cafeteria. Harrow gets to the front of the line and reaches for her coffee when the barista reaches to push the coffee to her. Their fingers brush. Harrow looks up at this girl she's never seen before. Super well-muscled arms and this face that makes Harrow's head spin. The barista smiles at her. Crooked little smile. Harrow blushes all over beneath the red hair. This barista has these eyes that are just absolutely not, said Abigail Pent. Harrow wakes up back in Canaan House and she starts to cry as memory hits her. Harrow cried for Gideon Nav. Did you like my bit? She looks at Abigail Pent. What have I done? And Abigail says, that's a question I was really hoping you'd be able to answer. Harrow remembers everything as it actually happened. Here's what's happening. I've been lying to you this whole time. Abigail, Magnus, Dulcinea, Ortis, Protessalawis, Isaac, Jean-Marie. They're all ghosts. Revenants. Very early on in the lictorial process, after Harrow took in Gideon's soul, she realized that I'm going to accidentally destroy Gideon, and she removed her ability to do that. Crafty lady DIY lobotomy queen went into her brain and she disconnected the part that remembered Gideon. To do that, she had to move some things around to make the pathway to Gideon harder for her brain to open. She also replaced the back of her skull with a construct. So this whole time that hasn't been her skull, that's been a construct. And it presses on different parts of her brain every time she thinks about Gideon or hears her name. And when Harrow did that, she started constructing these false memories in her head. But because Harrow's a necromancer and Harrow is a harrow, she accidentally started pulling in actual ghosts of people from those memories with Gideon in them to populate her memories. That's why all of the people who were dying in Canaan House were people who were alive in real life, because she couldn't make them up. She couldn't have them in there. And because Harrow was constructing this reality in the pocket dimension in her brain, they weren't always aware that they were in a pocket dimension in Harrow's brain. Sometimes they thought this was reality. It was kind of going in and out for them. Abigail's looking at Harrow a little bit odd and says, okay, I mean, that's all good to know, the whole lobotomy of it all thing, but I'm not talking about that soul. I'm not talking about Gideon. I mean the invasive soul. You're being haunted, Harrow. I thought that you were picking us because you wanted us to fight the angry ghost with you. I didn't think you were picking us because your brain was just constructing false memories. Also, it's a little cold. It's a little flooded. They're in the river. Remember, Palamides in the bubble in the river, which Harrow does remember now, and she feels super, super ashamed of because she should have thanked Palamides and hugged him. So Harrow did the same thing unconsciously. Whatever other thing is possessing Harrow, it started to rearrange the rules of her little pocket dimension. And that's where you get the weird stuff in the house. The way that time works in this pocket dimension bubble, it only activates when Harrow's sleeping, but for everyone else it's seamless. Harrow tries to get out of the bubble and back into her body, and she can't. Harrow says, well, that's unfortunate because, Abigail, in the real world, I have been fatally stabbed. The place that holds my body is about to be overrun by thanagetic monsters created by a galactic revenant. I am, put it bluntly, on the verge of death. My soul is under siege, and I overwrote my real memories with a ghost-filled pocket dimension, which has now apparently been co-opted by some kind of poltergeist. From what I can tell, I am stuck in here. I cannot get out, and I am about to die. I may even be dead already, which will render this all somewhat moot. Abigail explains to Harrow that if Harrow is still in the bubble in the river with the ghosts, she's not dead, she's still alive. But if her spirit gets unalived in the bubble in the river by that sleeper thing, Harrow's gone. Her spirit done for. Perma-dead. As long as they're all here, her body's fine. She hasn't been unalived, because if that went, then the bubble would go. Harrow and them, they'd be in the river for real. No more bubble. Right before the Emperor's murder, a rapier Harrow from behind, and suddenly Harrow was gone. The narrator, using the first person I, I'm here by myself in your body, Harrow, and you've left me, and where the frick did you go? I got the rapier out. Whoever stabbed you in the back, literally. The person in your body, I'm going to make them pay for that. And the person in Harrow's body is Gideon Nath. This is actual Gideon with thoughts and memories, and Gideon as a person. Gideon whose soul has not been eaten by Harrow because Harrow somehow is a mad genius. Yeah. I really lied to you at the start of this very unreliable recap. Okay, up until now, we have not been in second person just for fun, and then third person for the flashbacks. We have been this whole time dual POV Gideon and Harrow. But the Gideon POV from the second person you addressing Harrow, because she's in the body of Harrow. We can think of this as Gideon body POV and Harrow spirit POV. Two storylines, two timelines, like running parallel to each other with the two of them narrating this whole time. Except for that one Ianthe chapter. That was just Ianthe being a weirdo. I kept saying flashback just to differentiate between them, but those were not flashbacks, as we know now. But that was narratively incorrect, and I must admit it to you now. Going forward, I'm going to be honest with you. We are third person POV with Harrow in the river with the ghosts, and we are first person POV with Gideon in Harrow's body on the Mithraeum. But our girls have been here the whole time. Okay, not to be like, it's actually quite... You know pretty early on that it's Gideon and not Harrow who's narrating. The way things are described, it's just Gideon. Like, one from later on, Harrow's thinking about how badly she wants to rip out Ianthe's heart and eat it dripping, and the narrator says, you did not think about eat it dripping as you maybe should have. From this point onwards, like the last chapter with Harrow onwards, is the first time since the epilogue of the last book when you're truly getting memories intact, unlobotomized Harrow Harknonagesimus POV, like from her. All of the Harrow on the Mithraeum, because that's filtered through Gideon, right? So she still has sort of this prickly nun image of Harrow, which Harrow is a prickly nun. But as soon as you're in Harrow's head, the way she thinks and talks about other people, Harrow... Like, yeah, she's a sad girl. She's a depressed girl. But she's also just hella romantic. Anyway, Gideon. Before Gideon can really think about this too hard, a freaky insect made of guts comes around the corner. It's a herald. Gideon runs away. Gideon sort of knows the layout of the Mithraeum. If she wants to remember anything from everything Harrow's been doing, she has to actively think about it. It's like hearing a play from backstage. Gideon gets to the sword and struggles to pick it up. There's something that Gideon's more annoyed at than that Harrow didn't lift weights. We've reached another point in the book in which I'm going to insist on reading it word for word, and you're just going to have to deal with it. Harrow Hark. I gave you my whole life, and you didn't even want it. Gideon, who's feeling many a feeling, fights the heralds off, and then Gideon sees her reflection. Harrow, who looks too tired, and as always, too sad, but with Gideon's golden eyes. Get back here right now, or I'll make you say the worst shit I can think of.
Ooh, calamities. I am measurably less intelligent than you.
Nothing. I think bones are mediocre. Maybe you are dead.
Ooh, Gideon. I was so dumb to think that a tub of ancient freezer meat was my girlfriend. Please show me how to do a press up. Also, I'm very obviously attracted to...
Damn it, this is just sad. Come back.
Eat me and let's go full Lictor.
I didn't fall on a fence for this, Nonagesimus. But Harrow doesn't come back. It's just Gideon and all of the heralds that are piling into the hallways of the Mithraeum. Harrow and Canaan house, they go to that room that Harrow and Gideon found in the first book. And this room, Abigail tells us, is where she's been hiding Jean-Marie and Isaac, because they really didn't need to be involved in all that nonsense Harrow was doing. Abigail mentions, she says that Harrow never should have been able to grab Jean-Marie and Isaac in the first place, because they should really have just gone right across the river. into the space beyond. And Harrow says, that's nonsense. There's nothing beyond the river. You just stay trapped in the river forever. Very, very smart spirit magician that she is. We should believe Abigail, and we should remember the things that Abigail tells us in this book. Says, no, I think there is something beyond it. I don't think this is it. And also, I think there's something wrong with the river. I don't think it's supposed to be like this. When we're done with all this nonsense, maybe look into that. Maybe check it out. In that room is Ortis, Marta, Dulcinea, Protesilaus, and Magnus. They're all staying here to help Harrow. Harrow says, what do you mean you could have left? Like, you could have gone back in the river this whole time? And Abigail says, yeah. That's why Silas jumped into the ocean in Harrow's weird memories, because he just didn't want anything to do with this. Column's not there, because whatever that thing was that went in his body, his soul's gone. Riddled with Catholic guilt and self-hatred, Harrow, Harkness, the Josimus, feels terrible for every bad thing that she ever said to Ortis, for the way that she treated Gideon her whole life. Harrow goes up to Ortis and says, I'm sorry. So Harrow's trying to convince Ortis to go in the river, to not fight the sleeper with them, because he died because of her family, right? Crooks put that explosive on the spaceship that blew up him and his mom. And Harrow kind of knew, she didn't know about the explosive, but she knew that Ortis and his mom were going to try and run away, and that she'd have to take Gideon. And she was kind of fine with that, because Gideon's the better swordswoman. And Ortis asks, how did Gideon die? For this, Harrow, it hasn't been 8 months. It's been 3 days. It was the morning of the 3rd day, and all the back of her brain could say, in exquisite agonies of amazement, was, she is dead. I will never see her again. He hugs her and says, I am so sorry, Harrow. Gideon should be alive. I was and am a grown man, and you were both neglected children. And Harrow Harknonogesimus, reverend daughter of the 9th house, who should be beyond pity. The problem was that she had never been a child. She and Gideon had become women before their time, and watched each other's childhood crumble away like so much dust. There was a part of her soul that wanted to hear it from Ortis's lips even more than from the lips of God. He had been there, he had witnessed. Ortis tells Harrow that in life he never chose the noble or heroic thing, but he's going to choose it in death, because he has a chance to protect Harrow. Ortis and Harrow are still hugging, and Harrow is not used to physical contact. When she had first sat by the tomb in shivering awe, she had fancied that the body's ice-ridden fingers had shifted for hers, minutely. Gideon had touched her in truth. This bitch, I can't deal with her. As they untangle Ortis and Harrow, a little paper falls off of the desk, and that paper says, one flesh, one end, G and P. We are in Canaan House with all the lictor rooms. G and P, Pyrrha. But what about the G? Harrow's brain worked a little too well with its correcting. It overcorrected. She didn't account for context. Ortis, the saint of duty, is named Gideon. She's like, that's why everyone thought I was nuts. He's named Gideon. Abigail calls them down because it's time to plan. Abigail's plan is to do an exorcism. Gideon's walking around trying to figure out how Harrow's body works and trying to be very careful with it because it's Harrow's body. She hasn't been super successful in that. She's died 3 times. Gideon finds Harrow far too short. She's teeny tiny and she's too light. She keeps getting thrown across the room. She sees a pile of heralds around Mercy, and she locks eyes with Gideon, and Mercy looks terrified. Mercy says, now you come for me first, and then Mercy frowns. You're not her. That freak would have come for me right now, but you're human. And Harrow was meant to have been eaten by now. You stabbed my necromancer, you little bitch. Talks about the commander. She says I gave her perfect dolls. They were perfect. She must have just done something with the emission. Ruined everything. This could have been over 19 years ago. Amanda thought she was so smart. I don't know why Gideon was obsessed with her. Why are those eyes in your face? And then Mercy says, he lied to us. Cytherea would have known as soon as she looked at you. On the wall, in big black painted letters, are the words, you lied to us. And you are the proof. And Gideon says, what the fuck are you talking about? And then they fight. But as Mercy stands over her with a sword and a net, there's a gunshot, and Mercy collapses, screaming. Standing in the doorway, holding a giant gun, is Cytherea. Cytherea points the gun loaded with Herald bullets at Gideon, says goodbye, and then walks away. It's Harrow in the spirit dimension. They've set up a little ring of candles around that glass coffin. Harrow's looking in the coffin and she finds another note. End of the line. Falling. Oxygen can't last the distance and I won't redirect power from the payload. Instead, I will make you watch every moment as I get the last privilege you cannot. Enjoy, you bygone son of a bitch. I hope you're both as sorry as I am. And Harrow says, I thought those messages I was finding were hallucinations. I thought my madness had returned. And Ordis says, Harrow, you were never mad, sweetie. So everyone's here. Dulcinea's here. Real Dulcinea, who's very cute. She's got curly, brown, short hair. She has a little thing to help her breathe that Palamides made. As Harrow is talking with Dulcinea, she's like, I can't believe any of us fell for this. She's so like a little mischievous fairy, and that's not the vibe that Dulcinea was giving. Cytherea intercepted Protesilaus and Dulcinea like when they were on their ship from the 7th house to the 1st house, and she unalived Protesilaus right away, and then she asked Dulcinea a bunch of questions about her life, like, are you married? Who are your friends? And Dulcinea just lied to her. She told her a bunch of nonsense, and she really hoped that at least Camilla would have worked out that something was up. Harrow says, well, I don't understand why you two are here. Like, I never even met you. You don't owe me anything. And Dulcinea says, Protesilaus, he couldn't help it. He's just so noble. Never gives up on anybody. And Dulcinea says the only thing in life that ever stopped her from being exactly who she wanted was that she might die at any moment. And in death, that's not going to stop her. In death, she's going to get revenge. And Harrow understands why Palamides made a war of his life for this woman. Abigail's trying to figure out what the object is that the spirit's anchored to, because remember, the revenants need some sort of physical object to cling on to. Once they banish it from inside Harrow, it will still be in something physical on the outside. Then we have this orange space suit, the gun, the sword. Harrow says the sword. That's Gideon's sword, but none of the other things make any sense. And that sword didn't belong to anyone before Gideon. It was always Gideon's sword. Yeah, Harrow hated that sword. It felt weird and icky, but she thought that was just because Gideon wanted to unalive her with it. They start to do their summoning, their banishing, when the coffin flings open and that person in the orange spacesuit / hazmat suit jumps out. Harrow is not a lictor here. She's just a normal necromancer. Those limits are back. She can't do a lot of bone magic. Harrow / the Sleeper's pocket dimension. They kind of write the rules as they go, and you have to play by the rules of the bubble, because otherwise it gets really unstable and it might burst. That's why when Harrow was making the AUs, because she had been unalived and suddenly was remembering Gideon, those AUs were all messing with the rules of the bubble. So that's why Abigail was trying to get Harrow to go back to like the Canaan House one, because that one was the most stable. That's where they could all play along. As they get injured by the Sleeper, they really do feel pain. They're not going to die because they're already dead. Harrow's the only one in there that's still alive, right? She could be gone. There is a time when if they get unalived by the Sleeper in the bubble, that would be the end of their spirit forever, like permadeath. And the Sleeper talks to them. She says it doesn't have to be like this. Just give me the girl and all of you go back to hell. The Sleeper wants to steal Harrow's body so she can go unalive God. As we are fighting in the spirit realm, so we are fighting in the Gideon in Harrow's body realm. Gideon's a bit confused and she stumbles into the kitchen with someone standing on the counter above all of the unalived bees, and that person is Ianthe Tridentarius. Gideon refers to Ianthe as a tall, hot glass of skank. Harry, so delighted. And then her face falls. Oh, you. We understand how the eye thing works by now, right? We understand that when you become a lictor, you take your cavalier's eyes. They have to live on your face forever as sort of a mark of what you did. In this case, that's not Harrow living with the mark of Gideon on her. That's Harrow with Gideon inside her. Also, Gideon informs us that she's really struggling to not make jokes about all the double entendres here, as am I. Gideon's really, really pissed at Ianthe. Tiny Harrow voice, tiny Harrow body, but it's packaging Gideon. Do you want your ass kicked now? Or do you want your ass kicked later? Please, let's address this like gentlewomen. I'm going to pull your whole ass off. You want Harrow to grow you a new bone ass where I pulled off the old one? This can't be happening. Okay, why is she turning into Owen Wilson now? There's a fine line between Owen Wilson and Jennifer Coolidge, and apparently that fine line is Ianthe Tridentarius. She's not even into you, okay? It's just the bones. She's into bones. Okay, actually, for real though, did you guys fight that giant monster thing? Ianthe and Gideon come across Augustine, and Augustine turns to them and says, Harrow, what the hell? If you were alive, why couldn't... And he looks at her like she's the last thing he'll ever see. He just says, John, and then runs off. Ianthe, who towers over Harrow's body in a way that Gideon hates, just looks down at her, all bemused, and then leads Harrow Gideon to her room, to Ianthe's room, which Gideon kind of likes. Harrow hates Ianthe's room. It's all gold, very tacky, a lot of nude portraits. I don't know, Gideon and Ianthe, they kind of want to fight each other, kind of hate each other, kind of jealous, but they also kind of get along on a weird level. Anyway, Ianthe hands Gideon an envelope. And it's in Harrow's handwriting. Harrow had wrote 24 letters, and only 22 were for herself. And they had those other 2. Well, one of those letters was for Gideon Nav. You'd touched that letter, and you know it was killing me twice that you weren't there, right? You must know it was destroying me to be there, in your body, trying to keep your thumbs on, and I couldn't even hear your damn voice. Inside, there's a little piece of paper wrapped around some black tinted glass and metal frames. Harrow kept Gideon's sunglasses. I told you they were important. Gideon takes them out and puts them on, but they're a bit too big for Harrow, so they keep sliding off. She has to bend the backs. There are just 4 words written on that little piece of paper. One flesh, one end. Fuck. I wanted you to use me, you malign, double-crossing, corpse-obsessed bag of bones, you broken, used-up shithead. I wanted you to live and not die. You imaginary girlfriend having asshole. Fuck one flesh, one end, Harrow. I gave my flesh to you, and I already gave you my end. I gave you my sword. I gave you myself. I did it while knowing I'd do it again, without hesitation, because all I ever wanted you to do was eat me. Which is coincidentally what your mother said to me last night. Ianthe says, she's such a romantic. Gideon turns that anger to Ianthe. Everything that Ianthe did to Harrow, she did because Harrow was alone. All of that, Gideon says, you never even got anywhere with her. And Ianthe says, did you? This hurts. I'm back to the book. Love is a revenant, Gideon Nav. And it accumulates love stuff to itself because it is homeless otherwise. I'm not saying she didn't care about you, but I watched Harry rearrange her brain so that she could empty herself of you.
The toxic lesbians are toxic lesbianing.
And Gideon, I'm not going to put the sunglasses back on. I can't, guys. It's too dark in here. Gideon laughs at that, which is weird because it's Harrow laughing and she's never heard Harrow laugh like that. You think anything I did has been to make her love me. She's in love with the refrigerated museum piece in the locked tomb. She can't love me, even if I wanted her to. She can't love you. She can't even try. The girls aren't done fighting over Harrow Harkonnen.
Why defending her, Weasley? Have a crush?
No. Why all the insults, Malfoy? Covering up a crush?
Oh, yeah. Right.
Don't start the I was toying with her mwahaha noise because I won't believe it. Your plan backfired, Tridentarius. I know the signs of nonagesmitis. Ianthe by Ianthe standards looks a little crushed. Really? A corpse? What a little hypocrite. I caught the saint of duty in the throes of grave lust. Gideon tells Ianthe that she really has to lay off. And then they sort of jokingly flirt. I told you the toxic lesbian arc was coming. It's just because Gideon likes puns. Ianthe says, I'm taking you to God. Gideon says, no thanks. Ianthe says, well, you have to go to God for Harrow's sake. So Gideon says, okay. I can't believe these two. Gideon thinks that Harrow doesn't love her. Harrow hark, I love Gideon Nav Nona Jesimus. The person who keeps punishing Gideon. The earth around Gideon erupts in skeleton hands that very violently force her to the ground. I just thought it would be fun if you thought you could get away, and then I foiled you last minute, and then Harrow kicks her in the head. Ordis and his mom just stole your shuttle, actually, so Gideon, no, you're not leaving. I fucking hate you. Harrow kisses Ianthe with tongue. She remembers Harrow yelling at her, saying, you idiot, you fool, I don't hate you. I don't even remember about you half the time. Give herself a lobotomy. And she disconnected the part that remembered Gideon. I don't even remember about you half the time. My affections lie buried in a locked tomb. She doesn't mean that like she's a little Harrow just said I think that's a girl and she's super pretty and she has a sword and I'm in love. When I saw her face, I wanted to live. Harrow looks at the body, looks at her mouth, at her eyes. Harrow tries to kiss her.
Stop being so mean to me or I swear to God I'm gonna fall in love with you.
In the river, Ordis has started reciting poetry. Ordis is the author of the Noniad, the 18-book long epic poem. Abigail says, oh, Ordis, I don't know if I am strong enough to do that. Harrow keeps fighting the sleeper with her bones until Ordis gets taken out. He can no longer say the poem, but Harrow picks up where he left off. Harrow, who kept telling us how much she hated poetry and hated Ordis's stupid 16-book long epic poem, has enough of it memorized to be able to continue. Harrow hark Nona Jesimus. The candles flare. There's a figure standing in front of Harrow, ready to block the next blow from the sleeper. And that figure is Kithurea. I'm joking. It's Matthias Nonius. Abigail did a summoning. And Abigail says, yo, can you protect the 9th house heir, the daughter? Matthias Nonius is like, okay. Also, he's speaking in meter. Da-da, 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 which is so fun. This whole bit's sort of a fever dream, but Matthias Nonius was the best fighter, not just that the 9th had ever produced, but that possibly any of the houses had ever produced. The sleeper has said that she's fought wizards her whole life. These are both like the people to be fighting. You must sword fight on it crazy style. Ordis is fangirling. This man I've been writing 18-book fan fiction about my whole life is standing right there and he's fighting the sleeper so good. The room is starting to change. It's starting to look more 9th. Their weapons are changing. Their armor's changing. Ordis's poetic version of Matthias Nonius is doing it. So the sleeper can no longer use her guns because there aren't guns in Dreeber. There aren't guns on the 9th house. Have I said Dreeber before? I think I've just been calling it the 9th house, but that's the name of the fortress. Hold on, Harrow doesn't have bangs. Harrow has side bangs. After much fighting, Matthias Nonius fells the sleeper. All of the yucky organs go away. The Cavaliers are just in awe of Matthias Nonius. They're like, dang, dude, that was amazing. But also, oh my god, Abigail Pent, you summoned this man? Ordis says, Abigail Pent, you are amazing. I'm going to write you a really long epic poem. You're my next muse, girl. I'm going to write you the Pentiad. He says, I'd make you the poem you already are. And Magnus says, stop flirting with my wife. I'm joking. Do they not have jokes on the 9th? Abigail says, Ordis, we can't have done that. That was crazy. All I had to summon Matthias Nonius with was your manuscript. I think that we made a revenant link, a link between an object and a spirit through pure passion. They removed the mask from the sleeper, and it's this woman. It's the face of that woman on the portrait on the ship. Harrow doesn't know who the fuck that is. Why is that bitch haunting me? But there's something vaguely familiar about it. The jaw, the eyes. Harrow looks back down at the sleeper and she sees this little army tag, and that army tag says, awake. Tamsin Moore, when I get you. The whole room starts to disintegrate. Too much was altered in that bubble. The rules have been changed one too many times, and because Harrow can now distinguish between her memories and the fake memories that she constructed out of ghosts. So Matthias Nonius, the poem ghost man, says, Harrow, can you please release me? I owe a debt to someone out there in the river fighting a giant monster all by himself. Okay, so Matthias Nonius, at some point in his life, fought with the lictor Gideon, the Saint of Duty. He owes that man his life, so he's gonna go repay him his debt. And as we know from Gideon Jr. POV on the Mithraeum, Mercy, Augustine, Ianthe are all on the Mithraeum. Gideon's the only one in the river fighting the resurrection beast. He's all alone. It's not going really well. And Harrow says, okay, But you can't fight. You'll be scared of the resurrection beast. Ghosts are scared of resurrection beasts, and the river clears out when they go in there. Matthias Nonius says, don't worry about it. I'm all jazzed up from this fight. I'll be fine. Also, Ortis, Protesilaus, and Marta want to go with him. Abigail tells them, you guys know that if you get unalived out there in the river by the resurrection beast, that's it for you. You should come with us because we're going to find Jean-Marie and Isaac, and we're going to go cross the river to the other side. I really believe that there's something over there. They all want to go fight the resurrection beast, all the cavaliers. The 7th, the 2nd, and the 9th. Harrow says, I can't hold any of you. Thank you for everything. You can go. Now it's just Harrow, Dulcinea, Magnus, and Abigail. Harrow says, well, what do I do now? Abigail tells her, you're the host. So, you could go out in the river, leaving your body completely, or you can go home. You can go back to your body and wake up. But Harrow says, if I go back, that's it. I'll destroy Gideon's soul. Gideon. It had bewildered her back at Canaan House, how the whole of her always seemed to come back to Gideon. For one brief and beautiful space of time she had welcomed it, that microcosm of eternity between forgiveness and the slow, uncomprehending agony of the fall. Gideon rolling up her shirt sleeves. Gideon dappled in shadow, breaking promises. One idiot with a sword and an asymmetrical smile had proved to be Harrow's end, her apocalypse swifter than the death of the Emperor and the sun with him. She could let herself go, or she could go back to her body. And let her go. And it's Magnus who steps up and says, Harrow, all of this happened because you wouldn't face up to Gideon dying. You're clinging to her stuff. Like I clung to Abigail's scrap of a dance card that I had from that time she broke up with me for 3 years. She can't come back. Even if you keep her in a drawer you can't look at. She has to let her go. And grieve. Harrow asks, okay, well, what about the river option? What happens if I go in there? And Abigail says, well, spirits always want to return to their body. Without something for your soul to cling on to, you're going to get lost. Do you want to be a teapot with no sense? Don't walk into the unknown, Harrow. Go back to your body. Go home. Live for Gideon. Harrow's bad at goodbyes. She's bad at thank yous, but she says that one day she'll die and they can take it up with her then. But right now, she has to live. Abigail and Magnus say, okay, well, we'll see you then, Harrow. Also, Jean says, tell Gideon hi if you see her, but try not to see her for a while. Abigail Pent and Magnus Quinn leave. Dulcinea and her mischievous little fairy smile are still there. Harrow says, what do you want? I don't want calamities to haunt me extra. Dulcinea says, I actually have to tell you something. Back on the Mithraeum, Ianthe's leading Gideon to God. She's irrationally convinced that this is going to be the end of her story, and space is being cleared for a new character. Because that's how it goes in the comics. Tamsin, you can't keep getting away with this. But the door to the God Panic Room is open. And because Gideon and Ianthe are sneaky little ladies, they get behind the door and hide behind the coat rack. Through the clothing, they can see Cytherea's body tied up in a chair. God's asking a lot of questions, and he's calling her Commander Wake. This is her full name. Awake, remembrance of these valiant dead. Kia hua kotepe. Snap back to reality. Oops, there goes gravity. Sorry for butchering the Maori there, but Tamsin! They're talking, God and Wake. God's trying to figure out why was Wake at the 9th house 19 years ago when Gideon the lictor unalived her. Wake, you've been a revenant for almost 20 years. Abigail just told us about the crazy teapot. What was the Thanergy link that you rode here? How did you get into Cytherea? I'm gonna tell you this now because it confused me. So the inanimate object that Wake was clinging to all these years, that was the two-handed sword that Harrow thought hated her, with the ghost kind of spookies and Harrow's head being a little bit messed up. Wake gets into Harrow, haunts Harrow, walks Harrow through the Mithraeum so that Harrow would Cytherea with the sword. There's this big thing with the spirit necromancers and the soul exchange that there has to be some kind of point of contact. They have a special word for it that we'll get to in Nona, but if you kiss someone or There's the spirit can transfer. Wake's spirit transferred from the sword that Harrow used and it went into Cytherea's body. So it's been Wake the whole time running around in Cytherea's body. I don't super understand how Wake was both in Cytherea's body on the Mithraeum and in the Spirit River, but I guess Harrow was both on the Mithraeum and in the river. This is me speculating, but I think that Harrow, when she lobbed off that piece of her brain, I think she was trying to put Gideon's soul in the sword, and that's why she kept insisting on coating it in blood and bone. She's feeding the spirit, keeping it in there. Gideon didn't go in there. Gideon was staying in Harrow's brain because of course she was, and because someone was already in that sword. That's me speculating. Anyway, back to the plot. Okay, Augustine and Mercy walk in, and God says, "Meet Commander, wake me up inside." And Wake says, "I met the woman." Mercy gives up. She says, okay, whatever. If it's happening, let's do it right now. Cards on the table. Augustine, Mercy, and Wake start arguing. God says, "What did you go to the 9th house to do 19 years ago, Wake?" And Wake says, "To break into the tomb." Why does everyone think they can just walk into the tomb? "You can't get in there, not without me." And Wake says, "I came armed with a baby."
A child.
But she had to incubate herself for 9 months. She didn't want to do that. She didn't like that. Augustine's like, "Oh my God, it was yours? I thought you did IVF with one of Mercy's eggs."
So who is your dad?
This part is just this book. Wake says, no, those ones died. It didn't matter whose baby we were using anyway. I needed to just unalive the baby and open the doors. God says, okay, so you needed a baby. What, were you trying to do an explosion? As we learned from the conception of Harrow Harknotagesimus, babies contain a lot of energy. You can do a big Palamedes explosion, but times a million. Someone else comes through the open door. No one on this goddamn ship has ever heard of closing a goddamn door. Gideon, the saint of duty. They notice Ianthe, and Gideon moves the clothes aside, steals Gideon's sunglasses, and puts them on. And then puts the clothes back. Does not mention that he saw them there. How odd. And then Gideon, the saint of duty, shoots Cytherea, aka Wake. God freaks out. He says, "Gideon!"
That kills people.
Oh.
Gideon, the saint of duty, says the resurrection beast is gone. And Mercy says, "I don't care. I want you, Gideon, the saint of duty, I want you to know what God has done. I want you to know what Pyrrha died for." Gideon Jr., hiding in the curtains. Why am I wearing the sunglasses again? Sees God for the first time. Just some dude, but with really freaky black eyes. I mentioned before that they were black, but they're black, but with this creepy white ring around the pupil. They unnerve everybody. God looks at Gideon, the saint of duty, and says, "Did you know that Wake was pregnant?" And Gideon, the saint of duty, says, yeah, I didn't want to tell you because I thought it was mine." Oh my God. But how long was that going on? And Gideon, the saint of duty, says 2 years. It was complicated. And I don't know what those two, Mercy and Augustine, were planning. I didn't know about that. And God's like, okay, so you two were gonna unalive a lictor baby. You probably could have done some exploding, but you still wouldn't have been able to make it into the tomb. You need my blood. Augustine and Mercy say, "We know that. It's a blood ward. You think we're that stupid?" Mercy says that one of the other lictors, Cassiopeia, used to refer to blood wards as cell wards. They work off of thalergetic enzymes, blood cells, which are passed down. They can be tricked by the blood of a close relative, a parent, a child. One evening, planned for 500 years, and we called this plan Deus Appeti Major. He says we're doing Deus Appeti Minor. Augustine and Mercy kiss, and then Augustine kisses God, then Mercy kisses God. The three of them started to make out on the table.
Oh my God.
God says, "I didn't even remember Mercy with the power to read lictor bodies, with the power to move things around in lictor bodies. It is exactly what you think it is." God says, "Okay, well, Gideon, the saint of duty, you unalived Wake. I assume that baby was unalived at the same time." Gideon, of Gideon the Ninth in Harrow's body, not Gideon the saint of duty, walks out from behind the clothes rack and says, "I'm not fucking dead."
How old are you?
I'm 20!
And God says, "Hi, I'm not fucking dead. I'm Dad."
You are the father.
So, all of the notes that Harrow was finding were things that Wake wrote about Gideon, the saint of duty, but also Mercy and Augustine. Wake thought they set her up. Everyone seems to be traitoring on everyone, but the eggs from Mercy just weren't viable. Wake used the next best thing. She just did a DIY baby using God's emission. She put that baby in a bio container. Gideon caught up with her, pushed her out an airlock. Wake fell right into the center of the ninth.
Gideon's mother fell from the sky
with that little baby, who is half the red-headed woman with the curly hair and the jaw and the eyes, and half God. But we are at another part that's heartbreaking. When Harrow and Gideon were little, they used to fight. As we know, Gideon would say things like, "Harrow, what's going to happen when my other parent comes to get me?" And they end up being really important. And Harrow would say, "Well, I'll just tell my parents to lock you in a closet and tell them that you died of brain malfunction." They're so evil. Baby Gideon used to go sit outside her mom's niche, the niche that her mom's bones were in, and she would just talk to her. One day, Harrow caught Gideon saying, "I love you." Gideon can't remember what Harrow said to her, but it ended with Harrow on the ground and Gideon on top of her, choking her out. She only stopped when Harrow clawed some of her face off. They got into a pretty bad fight. Harrow clawed the skin on Gideon's face, and later on, Gideon finds Harrow inside the locked tomb. That's why Harrow could open that final door, because she did have God's blood. You remember how the great aunts always used to say, "Suffer and learn"? If they were right in Onagesimus, how much more can we take until you and me achieve omniscience? Now, Gideon... This is going to get so confusing. Gideon the Ninth and Gideon the Saint of Duty, okay? We know the difference between them. So the reason that Augustine and Mercy cooked up this plan in the first place was because the amount of power that God had, it did not check out. Even if you did the great resurrection, all that energy, that would eventually run out. The amount of power you have never runs out. Why? So then we started thinking, okay, well, what if God unalived Al, Annabelle Lee, Alecto, because he didn't actually want us to know where his power came from. And Al, the monster, we all hated her. Gideon, the Saint of Duty, says, "I didn't hate her." Shut up, Gideon, the Saint of Duty. She could never lie. God told the lictors that he unalived her, but God's a big fat liar, and he just switched her off.
Closing a goddamn door.
Now we know where your power comes from, God. The eyes have it. When all of the lictors saw Gideon's eyes, when they saw the gold eyes, those are Alecto's eyes. Alecto, who was made by God, had no genetic code, whatever she was. We know she's not human. But you know who did have genetic code? You know who had genetic code that made it to the ninth house? The only way that Gideon would have Alecto's eyes is if those were actually God's eyes. When they all saw her eyes, including Cytherea, they all realized that God had lied to them about how you become a lictor. It doesn't have to be this unequal trade of murdering your cavalier and forcing their soul into your body and using that power to burn forever, because God has Alecto's eyes. God's creepy black eyes with the white rings, they weren't around when God first made Alecto. They've always seen God and Alecto after they did the true lictorhood process. They swapped eyes. It's not a one-way energy transfer. No one has to die. God watched them unalive half their friends, their bonded loves of their life cavaliers, and none of them had to do that. Ianthe comes out of the coat rack. Augustine says, Anastasia, the ninth house saint who never became a lictor, she didn't mess it up, did she? She figured it out. And God says, yeah. Does it matter? I can't redeem myself for any of this. You guys are never going to forgive me. Augustine says, okay, well, I'd forgive you if you just give up. Stop invading all these planets. Just let it go. Nobody has to be punished for humanity. God looks at Augustine and says something odd. If the man you were before the resurrection heard you say that, he'd unalive you.
Mercy goes up to God and says, God, I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you for everything. You can rinse my memory like stupid Harrow did. Tell me that you loved Christabel. Christabel? Mercy's cavalier. God says, I'm sorry, Mercy. I loved all of our friends. I never wanted any of them to die. And Mercy says, I forgive you for everything. And then she puts her hands through God and explodes him. God everywhere. As we recall, if you unalive God, you unalive Dominicus. So the sun probably just went out and all of the planets are going to be destroyed. Mercy and Augustine are planning. They're like, oh, right, well, we can go in the river real quick, pop back out by Dominicus and watch our people go extinct.
Do you just ever get so aggressively hungry at 11:30 p.m. while talking about Harrow the Ninth that you have to go eat a bowl of cereal ravenously?
Gideon the Ninth says, we have to help them. Mercy just says, there's no way. And Ianthe, Tridentarius, says, how could you say that? So when they originally planned this plan, do the baby thing, open up the tomb, see if Alecto in there was really... and then unalive her themselves. They'd planned when they did that for a mass evacuation of the 9 houses. But now, it's over. And Augustine and Mercy, who hate each other, talk about what they're going to do now. Somewhere out there exists a home not paid for with blood. Babies always get born, houses always get built, and flowers will die on necromancy's grave. They look at Gideon, the Saint of Duty, and they say, you don't have anything to say about this whole unaliving God thing. And Gideon, the Saint of Duty, says, well, actually, but then all of the little pieces of God around the room go back together. God makes himself a new body, looks exactly like he used to. God, John, the Necrolord Prime, the Emperor of the 9 houses, unalives Mercy Morn. The sun is stabilized. Hopefully the 6th didn't get too toasted in that solar flare. Great work! Mercy must have trained for thousands of years in order to figure out how to do that, but you don't get where I am by being able to die. Augustine says, what about the resurrection beast? God, remember the panic room? God, you said you can't fight the resurrection beast in case you die, God, because then the sun dies. And God says, I lied. I was just acting scared. God saunters up to Gideon, the Saint of Duty, and says, Gideon, I'm not mad at you, dude. Like, it's okay that you were banging Wake for 2 years and thought you impregnated her with a child that you kicked out of the airlock. I'm not even mad at you that you failed to take out Harrow Hark. I want your loyalty. Do I have it? Yes, says Gideon, the Saint of Duty. Okay, says God. Ianthe. Yes, says Ianthe. Love your enthusiasm. Gideon looks at God, her father, and says, you're the one who told that man right there to unalive Harrow this whole time. It was you? God says, no, yeah, I did. I was trying to save her. Gideon says, go to hell. God says, don't worry about that. I'm not gonna give you the ultimatum, daughter I just found out about. I've been a deadbeat dad and your mom's unalived over there. Plus, you're not even in your own body. I'm not gonna punish Harrow Hark for what you say. Then the Emperor looks at Augustine. It says, Augustine, Mercy really pissed me off, so she didn't get a choice. But you do. My first saint. My beloved. Clean slate. Augustine looks at God, looks at Mercy on the floor, looks at everybody who's just joined God's side, and says no. The ship falls down into the river because Augustine, river expert, dragged everyone, ship, body, soul, into the river. Chaos erupts. God swept out. Augustine chasing after him. Gideon, the Saint of Duty, asks Gideon the Ninth, can you do necromancy? Gideon the Ninth says no. Augustine dropped them right down into the Baratheron, that bottom layer of the river. They're really far down. So Gideon the Ninth says, what do? Do we swim? And Gideon, the Saint of Duty, says, no,
It's not really a swimming, holding your breath kind of issue that we're so far down. The issue is the pressure. The pressure of whatever the river is what's going to unalive us in a couple minutes. We don't even have to really worry about the ghosts. Like, we'll probably be gone by the time they get here. They don't even really know what the river is, which makes me feel better. Gideon the Ninth says, okay, well, you're a lictor, figure something out. Gideon, the Saint of Duty, removes the sunglasses that they stole from Gideon the Ninth to reveal brown eyes. Which is odd because Gideon remembers Harrow seeing Gideon the Saint of Duty's eyes and they were green. This person says he fought the beast alone for hours and then the ghosts came and helped. And they almost had number 7. He could never walk away. Just like your mother. Not Gideon the Saint of Duty says, my name is Pira Dve. I didn't care that she was 10 years older than me. Pira Dve was hot. Augustine gets it.
So what do you guys want to do today? Hang out with your mom?
As Pira explains, Pira and Gideon the Saint of Duty accidentally compartmentalized. We don't know how that happened. Just like Harrow and Gideon. Now we understand who was telling Harrow that she should use fresh blood wards. His eyes were closed. It's because it was Pira. And I'm sorry, I've been misgendering Pira to keep the illusion alive for you. And I'm sorry about that. Pira uses she, her pronouns. Because she's Pira. She's just in Gideon's body. Gideon, the Saint of Duty. The weird notes that Harrow was finding. This is the throuple that Gideon's mom, Wake, was in. Gideon's mom, Wake, was in a throuple with Pira Dve and Gideon, the Saint of Duty. And Pira and Gideon, the Saint of Duty, did not know that they were both having an affair with Wake. This was a non-consensual threesome that Wake was having with the two people who were both in Gideon the Saint of Duty's body. Pira Dve says, yeah, your mom, she was so dangerous. She was so hot. She was a bit of a dick, though. Gideon says, what the fuck? Why was everyone banging my mom? And then they look out the window of the Mithraeum in the river. They can see God and Augustine kind of fighting. Remember? The holes to hell at the bottom of the river. Remember how those holes only open up when they sense a resurrection beast? Well, they're opening up for God. For some reason, they only open for the undead souls of monstrous planets. They're not just mouths in a metaphorical sense. They're mouths like they got tongues. They got tongues and there's a tongue on God trying to drag them into the chaos hole. The ship's probably going to get sucked in too now because that's opened. It's doing a vortex. Pira doesn't super care. She's been trapped in the back of a brain for 10,000 years and now her necromancer just died and now she's stuck with this baby from the woman she had a love affair with 19 years ago and it's not even her baby and it's in the body of the little goth girl who her necromancer was trying to unalive for 10 months and F this, says Gideon. I have to read you another sad part. Harrow, the last time I chose to die, I died with your face, the last thing I ever looked at. Let me tell you a secret. It was easy to die, thinking I wouldn't have to see you go. Now here I was alone. Harrow Hark, there was so much I wanted to tell you. I wish that on the edge of an ending bigger than I understood, that I was thinking about you, that the last word on my lips would be me saying your name, taken down to the dark heart of some world beyond. But my whole life and death had come crashing down around me. I was nothing but a chess move in a 1,000-year game. I mean, yeah, I was thinking about you too. If I could have turned that off, I would have turned it off years ago. But more importantly, I was absolutely fucking out of my mind, ninth house big pissed off. Gideon, super ninth house pissed off, kicks out the window. Her and Pira swim out. As they're swimming up, they look down at the others fighting and see God. God's been tongued. And Augustine is also there trying to get God down, but he's also been caught by a tongue. And Ianthe's floating there above them. It would be very easy for Ianthe to grab
Augustine pull him out. He hasn't been tongued that hard. And then they both make it out. Well, God finally gets what he deserves. God seems to be very liey, very unaliving of his frenzy. Then Ianthe saves God and pushes Augustine down into the mouth to chaos hell. Because it's Ianthe Tridentarius. I kind of love her. That pressure starts to get to Gideon. The pressure of the river's too much. And the last thing that Gideon sees is this beautiful woman with yellow eyes and long frosty golden hair. Fuck! It's Harrow's bullshit girlfriend. After all of this, in my last moments, Harrow's ice lolly bimbo freezer tomb girlfriend comes to get me. The other woman. Harrow's girlfriend says, chest compressions, we need that heart pumping. And Harrow Gideon dies.
Again.
But about a half an hour ago in the river, Dulcinea and Harrow are talking. Dulcinea can sense this, and she knows that Harrow is not being puppeted. She knows it's not a revenant. It's not that ghost they banished. Someone's in your body, and I think it's Gideon. I wanted you to know the whole truth before you made a decision. Fucking Harrowhark Nonagesimus says, I'm going to stop doing British. I can't do it. There's a difference between keeping a shred of dance card and saving the last dance. Dulcinea blows Harrow a kiss and vanishes. So now Harrow is all alone, and Harrow says, fuck it. I'm not going back to my body. I'm going in the river. So Harrow bursts the bubble. Harrow goes into the river, walks out. It seems like she's drowning. It seems like some weird things are happening. She's in the river. She's in Canaan House being held by Gideon and drowning. She's in a cave with an island with a coffin in the center. And just like Harrow did when she was a child, she walks up to the tomb, looks in, and the coffin is empty. The only thing in there is a sword. Harrow climbs in, hugs the sword. She feels something under her, and it's a dirty magazine. What the fuck? Nev, you ass. That's not even a real publication. And she smiles at the magazine. Harrow feels oddly comfortable here, lying in the coffin. Harrowhark Nonagesimus closes her eyes and dies. Or falls asleep. 6 months after the Emperor's murder. It's summer. And there's traffic outside. And, what Nona likes best is the colors of the sunset through the window. Nona lives with 3 people, and sometimes they give her bones. Sometimes they ask her to do press-ups, whatever feels right. And at night, Nona looks into the eyes of the person who takes care of her, the one with a hell of a bob and gray eyes. And she feels like she's always liked them. And she'd ask them, have you figured out who I am yet? And Camilla would say, not yet. Also, she's not referred to as Nona in that epilogue, but I'm telling you now, that's Nona. That's Harrow the Ninth. Sometimes I like to be spoon-fed a plot. Sometimes I like to have to go searching through entrails for it. In my experience with this book, which I love, to be clear, once you get over the initial discomfort of reading in the second person, I think that the events of Harrow aren't too difficult to parse. You get the fact that it's Gideon narrating pretty quickly, and then after that, it's just a mystery of like, what the hell did Harrow do? What's going on with the sleeper and the sword? And what's with the threesome notes? For those reasons, this book really rewards rereading. I don't reread Harrow as much as I reread Gideon. Gideon the Ninth is a comfort book for me. Gideon the Ninth is like the metal music I play on BC ferries when I'm overstimulated. I like listening to Gideon the Ninth.
Harrow, I can't be crying on BC ferries. The thing that always brings me back to the Locked Tomb books, the thing that makes me enjoy them so much, isn't just all of the fun structure things, which we know I'm a big fan of. I think the world is just so cool, so unique. I love that everybody's gay. It's not just all of these things. The thing that brings me back to these books is how real the feelings are. Every time they hit so hard, they land so deep. And I feel like everyone has been Harrow in this book at some point in their life. A little bit mad, a little bit alone, a little bit grievy. Last book, I said that Gideon was one of my favorite characters, but Harrow Harkononogesimus is my comfort character. And that's probably not a good thing, but I'll say it. I love the little black feral cat that I found on the streets and really didn't want me to take her in, and she won't even eat the cat food I keep buying her. All she wants to do is pray. She's literally just a girl. Yeah, Gideon is a bit more relevant to the plot now that we know lesbian ginger Jesus.
Haven't you people ever heard of closing a goddamn door?
There are so many excellent TikTok creators that do skits of the John Mercy Augustiniante Harrow squad on the Mithraeum for 10 months. I love each and every one of these. Every time I see one, my day is instantly so much better. You guys are so talented. Wow, that was a lot. I hope we've learned something. Don't put your best friend's soul in your body and then give yourself a lobotomy. See you when I'm talking about Nona. Bye. You look like a twig's funeral. What can I say? I love a little gall on... what can I say? I love a little gall on gall.